All right, folks, just to know, we are live streaming now. Be aware. Mayor, I'm going to try to contact him. Do you want to wait another couple minutes or get started?
We can wait another minute or so.
Hazen, do you want all the department heads to be on as panelists to jump in if necessary, or no?
I'm fine with that. I think it's the discretion of the board of how detailed they want to get tonight and maybe what questions go on the parking lot, so to speak. And
All right.
certainly prepared to do my best to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Have you been able to contact Jeff, Lori?
I just texted him. I'm waiting for a response. Looks like he's trying to get in.
Hazen, why don't you go ahead and start?
I'm sorry, 1 second. And Maureen, I'm seeing 2 attendees, but I don't see another name listed. Do you?
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing.
Okay, I don't know if that's going to be Jeff, perhaps. Mayor, if you don't mind waiting just one more moment.
Okay. Larry, that's a pretty sharp shirt you got there, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
That's nice.
This is my budget shirt.
I just got one question before we get started, which is, are we gonna let the city of Charlotte, outdo us on their salaries? That's what I want to know. Just joking.
Yeah. You're talking about the board salaries, yeah.
They
They're gonna.
well, they
really
cut their
make it.
salaries, right?
What?
Didn't they cut their salaries?
I thought there was a proposal of some really huge, increase. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they changed their mind.
Percentage-wise, it's a big percentage-wise. And by the way, for this board, I kept those flat, and unless y'all give me direction, like I don't mess with y'all's salaries till y'all say, would you look at it or consider, or what's the average? So the salaries in the budget are flat from the current year.
As long as we get our 3% a year like everybody else, right?
Jeff will be joining in just a moment. We'll be ready to start after that.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I was a little bit tardy. Had a little bit of technical difficulty.
No worries. Now, Hazen, you want to go ahead and start with your proposed budget?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, we do this each year. We do it at a 5:30 meeting. And it's really an introductory opportunity for y'all to get an overview of the budget. We did send out a line item budget to you earlier today. And just to go over the budget schedule, So tonight, obviously, this is the 5:30 meeting. And then on the 17th, which it'll be a week from tonight at 6 o'clock, we'll have the first budget workshop. And that will really be a much deeper dive, really to go any direction the board wants to, and for us to respond. And then the next regular town board meeting, which is May 24th at 7 o'clock, we'll do the legal public hearing, give the public we'll do a presentation at that point, and we'll also give the public an opportunity it's a public hearing. So as many folks that are interested are going to be welcome to speak. And then 2 weeks after that, which is June 7th, we'll have a second workshop, budget workshop. And I guess the ideal goal would be to adopt the budget on the 14th of June, which would be the first regular meeting. But please know that's the number of budget workshops we have. That is all in the discretion of the board on where you're comfortable. How many more do we have? We can, typically we do it on Mondays, but we don't have to do it on Mondays. Special meetings just need 48-hour notice. So just know the board has total discretion on how we go forward with this. Any questions? Okay. So the second thing I want to mention is the long-awaited American Recovery ARP planning. Anyways, that did get released today, 151 pages. I think Becky did a quick, like, what's going on kind of thing, probably like hundreds of thousands of people across the country. We will have an hour training tomorrow through the league to talk about more detail with the American Recovery Plan. However, a high level review, it's not what we thought it was going to be or what we were hoping it was going to be. The federal dollars look to be very stringent and strict, and I don't think it's going to be, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a silver bullet. And just in as example, hiring employees, the way we're reading it, can only be done if a government cut employees as a result of a lack of COVID revenue. And we did not have that occur in Matthews. So keep that in mind. It does look like there's some money available for water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. I'm not really sure why they carved those specifically out, but stormwater, there may be some opportunity for us for stormwater. Also, and maybe this goes without saying, but we can't say, okay, we want COVID dollars and we want it for a rainy day fund. That's not the intention. They want to see it out. And then there is some language about a limited revenue loss. And then it does say you can be used for general government services infrastructure. So maybe that is an angle that we can explore. But like the premise of the budget you're going to see was this is a $0.015 tax increase with the possibility of a $0.015. Could that be funded through ARP funding? Because this $0.015 is geared towards new employees. And the answer to that at this point, in staff's opinion, is no. So we cannot use that. We cannot use those funds. Now we'll learn more tomorrow, and I'm sure because the COG is doing one too. So we're going to get a lot of information from a lot of different sources here in the near future.
So are we still going to get $9+ million?
That's still the number, but I think it's going to be super restricted on how it's going to be used. There is part of that is pushing it out to the community, like let's say restaurants that lost revenues. But we also knew there was like $28 billion in federal funds that restaurants could tap into. So we were hoping our 9.7, we could really focus on things we need in the town. And it's going to be a much more difficult lift, if not impossible.
Based on what you just said, it sounds like paving could fall in that category, right?
I don't read it that way. Becky, do you read it that way?
So not to get too into the weeds, but based on the cursory overview, there's going to be a formula that we will go through that establishes how much revenue we will have lost due to COVID. They've got some calculations and some percentages. Let's say that equates to $2 million that we could definitively say. That $2 million may be a pool of money that we could use for general infrastructure. Paving could potentially fall into that pool, but it has to be directly tied to that established lost revenue. And then that would be the cap of how much you could spend on that general government operations, as an example, using it for something like paving. If it doesn't fall into that bucket, there's some language in the guidance that would prohibit the use of a general infrastructure project like paving. So I think the short answer is maybe. Is how far we've gotten with it. It would not just be a blanket, yes, we could do paving because it's infrastructure.
Might be a good topic for Congressman Bishop. But, you know, I'm really concerned if it's so restrictive, what are we going to do? Have gold-plated, stormwater facility? And, if they tie our hands to say you can only use it on X, Y, and Z, that seems kind of, and they're giving us $9 million that we don't want to give back. Hopefully maybe you guys can share the Cliff Notes version after some more training with the board, and we can.
Yeah, we'll be happy to.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments or questions before I do a little presentation? Mr. Miller.
Thank you. When did we get the funds restrictions or guidelines from the government?
2 hours ago, 3 hours ago.
So that's kind of dovetails into why we got the budget info 3 hours ago, 2 hours ago, right?
No, that was just coincidental.
Well, the same thing applies. I mean, we've heard talk about planning and zoning issues and elevations coming in Monday afternoon at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. None of us have had time to review any of those details. Inside that email that we got around 3:45, is there a history of taxation for the last, say, 10 years or 6 years?
Your question, why did you just get the budget?
Yeah.
Question. Okay, so here's what we used to do. When we meet in person, we would have this same process, a manager's overview, and at that meeting, we would give you a hard copy in the booklet of the budget.
Okay.
The absence of that, what we thought is, okay, let's just send you guys out an electronic copy virtually the same time you're getting a presentation from me. The intention is not to have y'all like, God, I gotta go through this thing and review it. It's like, in my mind, listen to the manager's overview budget. And then next week at our first budget planning session, we'll take any deep dive in any direction that y'all want to go to. However, having said that, if something pops up as I go over and you want to talk, anybody wants to talk about it, that's fine. That's fine as well.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I'll go into the, Jay, can you pull up the manager's presentation? Okay. All right, so obviously it's the 21-22 budget. Sometimes we will call that FY22 budget. So for, I guess, the jargon standpoint. So just a recap of the budget we are in now, which is the 2021 budget fiscal year. Our property tax rate is at 28 cents. At the last audit, our fund balance did exceed 34%, which is our policy. As part of that 21 budget, we did not appropriate any fund balance. And we did reduce revenue projections and expenditures in both general fund and tourism fund due to the COVID-19. And then we did in the budget, the 21 budget, there is about $184,000 in CARES Act funding for expenses related to the pandemic. And then we are still working with FEMA to see if there's what additional expenses may be eligible in this 21 budget. All right, in the 22 budget, we're expecting continued recovery in revenues, particularly related to sales tax. We'll talk about that a little bit. We are proposing 7 new positions to meet the organizational needs of the organization. I do, in my mind, when you hear the justifications, I think they're very strong. So what this necessitates, in my opinion, is $0.015 tax increase in order to fund these. As we kind of this caveat here, the American Rescue Plan funds may be an opportunity to reconsider a potential tax increase. That was put together, that statement was made before we got to review, before the guidelines came out. So that's, you know, we're going to have to wait and see on that. The answer to that may be no on both of those, or maybe a small yes with capital projects. Next slide. Okay, so here's a history of our kind of tax rate history. In 2011, we were at 33.25. This is all based on $100 valuation. 2012, we had the reval and we dropped our tax rate 10% because our valuations went up 10%. And then, you know, this is all about the time of the recession. We had to refund a bunch of money. The county went through a revaluation. And so the last revaluation was 2020. At that time, we went revenue neutral and went to 28 cents. The good news is the next reval will be in fiscal year 24 or 23-24. So they are going to start going on a 4-year cycle. They did not want to go on a 4-year cycle between 2012 and 2020 because they were in the midst of a reval at that time. It was just too really confusing. So in this year's budget, I am proposing a 29.5-cent tax rate. Next, there you go. So kind of, I guess, a little ironic here is our general fund budget is about $500,000 less in 22 than it was in 21. But the reason is really one simple capital project, and that's the paving. We had a big paving project really in fiscal year 20 and 21, and that accounts for the difference in the a smaller budget than 21. Here's kind of our sources of revenue. Property tax about 59%, sales tax is 16%, shared state revenues about 12%, and then our other, which is 13%. And of course, Powell bill is the money we get from roads.
Hazen, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Can you go back a slide? I guess Jay's driving. So our budget, what necessitates a tax increase if we're spending less money, proposing to spend less money than we did last year? Why do we need a tax increase?
Right. So in 21, the 1 year we're in, we had a paving project that was continuing from the previous year. So it artificially, the way I see it at least, artificially increases the budget on a one-time capital expenditure, which in this case was for paving. Does that answer your question, or?
I don't know. Does anybody else have any issue with that? I mean, it just seems kind of odd.
So what we can do when we go over the, we can, like next Monday, we can talk about it, or I can show you on, if you look at the line item budget, you'll see like this one-time expenditure and it's for paving and it's like $1.3 million. And normally we budget $800,000. And what it is we didn't do paving for several years. Then we had this I think it was a $2 million paving project that extended over 2 fiscal years. So it's not, and that's why budgets can be a little deceiving. People say a 5% increase in budgets. Well, is this reoccurring stuff? Is this one-time stuff? Are you building a fire station? You know, that's going to artificially, in my mind, artificially inflate a budget on a one-year thing because you're building a $5 million fire station or something like that. In this case, it was paving that was the one-time unusually high expenditure.
Just a real quick side note, is there any way we can get a hard copy of the line item budget that we can pick up at town hall? I just like to make notes on
You
that.
sure can, instead of printing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, anybody else want one?
I'll take one. I'd also also think it would be helpful if we could see the 2019, 2020, or maybe the 2018, 2019 general fund budget. So there's a context there for the artificial inflation that you're talking about.
Okay, sure. So you want to see budgets for 4 years?
I mean, if that, I guess 4 years back goes to the year before the 2 years of paving, right?
Yeah, but just know there's so many different factors, but we're happy to, because you will see you do see normal growth because, salaries go up 3% a year, or operations go up 2.5 or 3% a year. So there's normal growth. And then there are periodic spikes. Here's an example of a periodic spike in 21. 20 and 21 would have the periodic spikes in it. All right, so we got two budget requests, 2 paper copy budget requests.
I don't want those 4 comprehensive budgets. I was just saying so we could see that general fund balance, that one number for each of those other 2 years.
Okay.
I want one too, Hazen.
Okay. It sounds like we've got 3 paper copies. Okay, next slide. All right, so here's some examples of, go back a second, Jay, I don't know if okay, yeah, okay, go to the next one. All right, so here's really just 2 examples that right out of the gate, not even operations, but state retirement contributions have gone up $173,000. They are trying to keep the retirement system very healthy, which it is very healthy compared to other states. And then solid waste, which costs us about $2 million, went up, I think 3.6%. Well, that hits us at $63,000. And having said that, the $2 million for solid waste, that equals 4 cents on our tax rate. And it's very common across the state that there's a separate solid waste fee that's outside this tax rate. So we got a 28 cent tax rate. 4 cents of that is gobbled up, in my mind, with solid waste. So somebody could argue our tax rate that goes to fund our operations is 24 cents. If you look at across the state, that's not the way it's done. In fact, in Cary, they, at their last revale, kept their tax rate at 35, and they charge their residents $19, almost $20 a month for solid waste, which is $240 a year, which would, my guess is that takes care of their solid waste 100%. So just keep in mind when, if you're comparing tax rates, sometimes they can be deceptive or you just don't have all the information. All right. Next, so what does the budget include? It's a 3% merit pool increase. We're showing 7 positions, 4 officers, 1 deputy chief, facilities maintenance technician, a landscape maintenance worker. We're proposing to contract crime scene technician and then reclassify our telecommunication positions, which we have 11 of. All right. So now what I'm going to do is go through the different budgets, and again, this kind of high level overview. Here's the governing board. That's you guys, you all. There, if you look on the fiscal year 2021 amended budget, you see $597,000. Like, well, how is that so big? That is where we, y'all have acquired 3 pieces of property this year, or we have, 335 East Matthews Street, 925 Matthews School Road, and then the property out there across from Purser property. And so that's where that money's being accounted for. So in 22, it's gone back to more normal rates. Okay, next one. So this is the manager's budget. We are going to continue with the monthly digital newsletter, continued training for staff. In this case, in the operating, that one's so high, the $227,000 is that's where we've put a lot of the COVID related expenditures into that item. All right, next one. All right, HR, we are continue the expanded EAP program that we did last year for first responders, really giving police, fire, but particularly police, this opportunity to reach out to, an EAP stands for Employee Assistance Program, to talk to someone. We are in certainly unique times to be a police officer. Then the second bullet there is $32,000 for targeted recruitment. And that is specifically focused on covering advertising costs, focusing or specializing on minority and women advertising avenues. Some of them are, monthly subscriptions. Some of them are on a per ad basis, but it's really to make sure we get this word out and continue to try to cast a wide net for recruiting.
There's a question, Hazen.
I have a question, Hayes.
Yes, sir.
All right, so this $32,000, is that going to be set aside for a person itself to recruit?
No, sir. It's just reaching out to these services that provide, ads, and then they get to a targeted audience.
Who's going to do that?
Tanya, HR.
I have some concerns because I've been hollering recruiting for 5 years, and I've heard the same thing, that we don't have the money nor have the resources. I have a strong heartburn, and I tell you, I make no bones about it. I said it the last time we met, but I'm totally disappointed in this town not being able to recruit people of color and hire people of color that make over $70,000 a year. I've said that. I was told over a year ago that you got it, that you understand that you need to do diversity, and you still had openings come up this past year, 2 openings, and you still filled them with white females or white male. And I really, as a commissioner, as a person of color, I'm really offended. I'm really offended because this town I love. I'm part of this team. I've hollered, I've asked, I've been compassionate, and it's time for you keep asking money for more positions, but yet and still you're not hiring any people, and you're telling me you can't find competent, qualified people of color. That's hogwash. I'm not buying it anymore. I asked you nicely, and asked you as a commissioner and as a person of color to consider people of color that make money over $70,000 in this town. And to only have one person making over $80,000 in the town of Matthew in 2021 is utterly ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I'm for hiring. I was a recruiter. I know how to recruit and find you some people for these positions, but you can't just keep stacking the deck with all white males and females and think you're doing a good job and then keep coming asking us each year for more money, and you're not being fair across the board.
A couple thoughts on that. One, we do try to recruit folks from all races. And there's a lot of protected classes, more than just persons of color, females, males over 40. And so we are obligated to hire the most qualified persons for the job. And I do think we've done a good job of trying to find those people.
I don't think so. I don't even think you tried. I don't think you tried, and you got to show me something that you convinced that you went out actually seeking some people of color, females, and not just white females. You got plenty of white females in the town. I'm not, and I've said this once before. I'm not against you making those kind of salaries. I have no problem. My problem is you're not hiring no people of color, black folks, that make over $80,000 in the town of Matthews. Sure, we hiring, and the only one doing the recruiting and hiring people of color is the police department. And kudos to Chief. He gets it. He gets it. But he cannot do no more than you allow him to do, or your team allow him to do.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but a high percentage of our openings have been in the police department. We have very small departments. Finance has 3 people in them. Planning has 7. I mean, I would say if Mayor, Commissioner Whitley, if you feel like this is a performance issue, I would bring it up to the board, and y'all need to handle it how you feel like it's appropriate to do. But I do feel like we're doing a good job. I think we're following the law, and that's how I would respond.
Hazen, I've got a question to follow up with that. How will this is a new line item, something that we haven't done before? This 32,000?
We've done some of it. We're already doing some of it. We're just trying to do more of it.
And how do you judge the efficacy of this? I mean, how do you know if it's being effective or we're just wasting money? I mean, Tanya or Becky's on the people do not have to put down their race if they don't want to. So, we keep track of those numbers, or those classifications, but not everybody does it. Yeah,
There's questions on the application for how you learned about the job. And that's where a lot of that data is captured of what site was it found on, or what location was it found on. And then the HR department can run analysis based on that to see, we spend $4,000 with X publication over this year, and it resulted in one application. Obviously that's not a good ROI unless it was the one chosen. And so we do have the ability to do that if the applicant specifies. It is an open-ended question, so you do get a variety of thoroughness in terms of how specific the applicant gets, but the question is asked in one of the last questions on the application.
I have a question. Larry, if this is a human resources page and they've identified an increase of 32,000 for targeted recruitment, let's say you had suggested J.C. Smith University recruiting there or something, Doesn't this show that they're making an effort?
No,
It's targeted recruitment.
no,
What does it show you?
it don't show me nothing. It don't show me anything when I've been here 5 years as a commissioner and working with the town. And I've said this from the first time. I had hope when I first came here that you would look at this thing and see that here I am in a town, on a town that make up 34,000 people now. Back then, I think it was somewhere around 28, 27,000. And the percentage of person, but when you look at when you sit down and look at your town, and I'm speaking because I have recruited and I know what recruiting, when you don't have an equal amount of people, you can't hire them the proportionate that you have staff in the town. When you walk into town, you should be able to see some makeup of people of different ethnic backgrounds and color that's in the town. When you walk through our town, it's all white men and all white female. I have nothing against that. Listen to me. I have nothing against that. My problem is you're not actually filling those positions that comes available where you can look out and actually seek and try to find a person of color, a Black person, to fill in this and make some of this good money. I don't have no problem with y'all making good money. That ain't my issue. I'm happy for you. My issue is you gotta spread some of this wealth to other races in this community. That's my issue. And you're not actually trying to do that.
That's not a fair statement. That is not a fair statement. What I hear you saying is that there's not enough persons of color at town hall.
There's not enough persons of color, and yes, at town hall, if you walk around, but if you look around in the fire department as well, the police department is the only one that is actually recruiting and trying to make a difference, but they're all at the bottom of the pay scale. That all the minorities that's in the hiring of the town of Matthew is at the $50,000 or less pay grade.
I am legally bound to hire the most qualified person for the job.
And you have done a wonderful job of hiring that.
So
Can I jump in for a second? I think, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but I think what we need to do as a board before our next budget meeting is come up with a system of measurement and expectation for that $32,000. And it may not be, in my mind, I just finished a course because this is important to me too. And I don't really understand HR, but I looked, I took a course on the DEI certificate program. Just to better understand what we can do legally. And so part of what we could ask for Commissioner Whitley is to say, okay, let's look at previous applications and the percentage of people of color that applied was X number. This is what we expect out of this money and this investment. Because, statistically, the larger percentage people of color you have applying, the more people of color you're going to have in your workforce. And so if we can expect a certain percentage of response from this targeted recruitment, then we know that we're investing dollars in the right place. Does that make sense and give you a sense of confidence that that's moving in the right direction? Or is that, tying it to a success rate?
Yeah, Renee, my whole point is this. If you want to hire a minority, you got to actually go out and try to make sure you want a minority. If you just say, I'm going to hire the best qualified, it's going to be always white male, white female. That's what is proven in this town in times past. But you're telling me you want to hire the best person, but yet and still you don't have a recruitment to advertise that you're looking for qualified people of color and have a program there, and then interviewing people that are equally as qualified when you come to doing the application or going through the process. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are other things that we could talk about to get to that point. You know, there are blind applications that you can do or things like that. But for the budget and for this request for the $32,000 of targeted recruitment, I think as a board, we need to decide or ask for measurement, and how do we want to see that measurement?
Yeah, I agree. Mayor Pro Tem Garner and Commissioner Whitley, I think we need to, and Hazen, you and I have discussed this, not just check the box and say we're trying to expand our net to include more minorities, but to see if we're actually having any success doing it. So yeah, some sort of measurement would be good. Even if it's the number of minority applicants.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to at least come to the defense of our female staff. I know Larry says he has no problem with it, but there's a problem with it. I think that we have a fantastic assistant town manager, now a finance director. We have Maureen, Lori. I mean, we have a huge wealth of female in high positions in this town. And let's be real frank. I can go to other cities and towns and communities and walk into that town hall and see only Black faces. So the contrary could happen, but we have to look at the progress this town has made from that aspect of it. And I don't think that there's anything nefarious going on between Hazen and his staff to preclude hiring Blacks or Latinos or what have you, but we have to look at the meritocracy of this situation. And I granted Larry's been here for 5 years. A lot has changed in 5 years as well. But I do take umbrage in the fact that our female staff has been sort of demoted almost to the rank of white, middle-class white guys. And that's not right. There really isn't right whatsoever. And I don't know what we can do. Let's send Larry out to recruit. But I also know that I don't know that
Receive it in Jesus' name. Send me out to recruit.
Okay.
But now listen to me. Don't send me out to recruit and find people that are qualified and then you pass them by. They'll waste my time. I don't have no problem. I'm a recruiter. I can do that. I can find you what you're looking for if you tell me what you want, the qualification. But don't waste my time telling me you want to recruit. And in essence, you know you're not going to hire no people of color.
So what you're doing is accusing people of not recruiting properly to your standards. I have no problem with Larry Whitley going out there and recruiting. I have no problem in sharing this information with Larry, but I don't know how many people apply. It's not our business to know how many people apply, what color they apply in. If we can open up that door and look at it, that's fine. But frankly, how do we do that? So if there's a vehicle in which to get Larry out there to recruit, I'm all for it as a board member.
Well, I don't, maybe this isn't the time and place to talk about all this, but what I heard Larry say is that he will bring us a qualified person and we need to hire him.
No, that's not what I said. See,
Okay.
that's not what that is not what I said.
Say it again.
What I said is that if you want some, listen, you can't recruit people of color when they don't have somebody to look like them and explain to them. We've had people in our town that we had hired in these positions of people of color, the HR person before this last one, but she only stayed 7 months and went back to Charlotte. See, it's not just a matter of recruiting a person of color, but you got to make them feel that they are welcome to stay here. You know, that was part of our training, diversity training we just took. You got to be able to really want a person of color. But for your years, or 18 years as town manager, and Corey King is the only Black person that's in leadership, that's I cannot.
Let me say it again, Larry. Bring it up to the board. Okay.
No, I'm bringing it to you, Hazen.
You get a majority vote, Larry.
This is your budget that you putting before us. I'm good. Go ahead with your program. We'll talk about it. We can talk a little more. I won't hold this up.
Larry, are you saying that the reason the HR lady left, the person of color left, was our fault or her choice?
It's her choice.
All right, so you can't hold that against Hazen. You need to let it go.
I've let it go. She's gone.
Yeah, well, but you just implied it was Hazen's fault because she didn't feel welcome.
She did not.
She left for more money, I think.
That's not Hazen's fault entirely. It is more money, but you got to realize you hired her. You didn't hire her as an HR head director. You hired her as an HR manager, making $6,000 to $8,000. Then you bring somebody else in and make them a manager. You see the
Okay, let me respond to that, because that is a good point. So what we had, part of this whole problem, and why you're looking at 7 people, is we're a town of 32,000+ people that's grown very fast, and we're not a mature organization. So we didn't even have HR. Kamala was our first HR person, and Jim Taylor was the mayor. We had to fight and argue like mad to get her in, and then we could only get her in at a manager's salary. So we couldn't pay her what she needed to be paid. And that, in my view, that was the block at that point was the board at that time didn't want to go further. So we said, well, we're going to figure this out. Brought her in as a manager. She left. And then it was like, okay, look, we tried the manager's route. We tried to save you money. It did not work. And we had to bring in a full-blown department head to make it work. But this is true across the board. When we start talking about a deputy chief, a deputy fire chief, to have a department of virtually 80 people and you don't have a deputy chief, that's like you're setting people up for failure. And we'll talk about what's going on in public works, about how much property we've added, and we haven't added people. The same thing with facilities management, the same thing with police department. So it's a systemic problem of trying to keep a tax rate at 28 cents and try to run the greatest town in North Carolina, or whatever we pride ourselves.
Yeah, Hazen, I was one of the one pushing for our HR department. When I saw the town decide that I'm for that. I'm for assistant chief. I'm for assistant fire chief. All I'm saying is this: they make good salaries, and it's the money in dollars. It's called and it goes right back to economical holding a race back where they don't make the same equal amount of money. So if you're below a certain amount of income, then your ability to get out of that range is going to be there where you're stuck. But if you're making over $80,000, $125,000, $160,000 a year, you can set yourself up to be financially, not only for you, for people coming behind you as well, also your family.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying. But listen, listen. I'm confident that this town is going to get it, because I'm a part of this town, and I'm not going to be the only Black commissioner or person here that cannot see that we need to hire some people of color. But you tell me you got it, and you didn't get it. If you tell me you don't get it, then we can sit down and talk and see how we can get there. But I don't want to hold this up.
Okay. Well, I got to respond, because I keep hearing things that I'm going to respond to. Larry, I do get it. I promise you I get it. The problem is that I have to get it legally, and we got to find these people that compete and can win. And would be very excited to diversify our workforce, but legally I can't set ourselves up for a.
I'm not asking you to do anything illegally. I'm asking you to do things fair and equitable. That's all I'm asking. Fair and equitable. You can do that. You can do that if you want to do that, but you got to want to do that. And that's all I'm saying. If you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. You've heard that before. Even our town attorney says the same thing. So let's move on. I said what I need to say. And
Yeah,
we'll
I
talk.
think maybe this is a discussion for another meeting. Because we could talk a long time on this topic. So why don't we move on with the budget for tonight?
Okay, so now we're at finance. Really not much that changes there. We continue to operate bare bones and still get accolades from the government finance accounting office. All right, so next is information technology. Not much of a change there. We are continue to be very vigilant about malware and cyber attacks. Wayne sends out monthly tests, and we gotta keep doing that. You've heard the Colonial Pipeline got whatever caught over the weekend. Let's go to safety and risk management. Another example, we went to the league with our property and casualty and workers' comp. That continues to be a good program for us. So you see kind of marginal increases there as well. All right, next one is police. That is a big mover. Talk about the 4 police officers. We estimate that to be about $250,000. Those officers need to be equipped with vehicles and equipment. And then we've ordered 7 or 10 vehicles total. So next year we'll get 14 total. If this budget goes through, we'd get 14 total vehicles. 3 of them are going to be paid with funds this year. I think we had to order, if y'all recall, we had to order the equipment early, the vehicles early to make sure we got them. Crime scene technician. This is kind of an interesting little story. The example that I can think of is we had an accident over at 51 and Sam Newell Road. The accident went across the intersection. We had to close down the intersection. Then we had to wait on the crime scene folks we used from Charlotte several hours, fully staffed with our investigators. Just showed how captive we are to Charlotte. Charlotte eventually came, but we're not their top priority. This crime scene technician would offer us that ability. And then the 4th thing down there is telecommunicator positions. We are proposing to put in $25,000 in the budget. This would be a reclassification of all the telecommunicators. That would be a 5% increase. We have had employees leave for 25 cents more an hour. They've gone to Union County as a good example. The Sheriff's Department kind of poaches our folks. There's 11 people down there. The average salary is about $39,500. So that would be about an average increase of about $2,000 for an employee. But to not have so much churn in that division of the police department would be a great advantage to the town. All right.
Hazen, clarification.
Yeah, sorry.
So that's okay. Zoom sucks when you're trying to communicate this way. So in your initial presentation, you said you were looking for 7 hires, but when you add in the deputy fire chief, 4 patrol, landscape, facilities maintenance, and crime scene tech, you're really talking about 8 now, correct?
That's a contract that I should have been better clear about that. It's a contracted position, job.
Okay, so you're saying so the benefits of insurance and things like that, we don't have to worry about that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I can feel myself going a little too fast here. Okay, so under.
Sorry, Hazen, I do have just a comment.
Yeah.
On the last slide.
Yes, sir.
So our police budget has gone up over $1 million in 2 years. That's a huge number.
Yes, it is.
So the question is, why has it gone up so much?
I mean, that's just a little stunning when you see it in black and white, in
Yeah.
2 budget cycles, it's gone up $1 million.
Well, we've had, if you, a 3% raise at $6 million, a 3% raise is $180,000. And then, we've had 2 years of increases to the retirement system. That's probably another, let's say $100,000. So there's an example. But what we can do is give you a breakdown of the things that have increased in the police department. Some of what we're trying to do is we did a 2018 staffing needs assessment, and we're trying to fulfill that. And if we added the 4 officers, we would fulfill the 2018 staffing needs program. So just know we're really just trying to get up to a report that we got, whatever, three years ago.
Right.
And we are making progress. That's the good news. We're making progress. All right, fire. So we are proposing a deputy fire chief, and a vehicle. Deputy fire chief salary and fringes is somewhere around $110,000, maybe a little less. And then vehicle and equipment is about 50. So, we do have, and we can get into this either tonight or whenever y'all want to, about how we do it compared to other folks. We have a bare bones operation. The chief is really doing, he has too much on his plate. No organization that we've seen has a chief, captains, and then everybody else is firefighters, and then operate, good planning, incident management control, just a plethora of things don't get done because the chief simply doesn't have time to do it all himself. All right, Public Works, we're proposing.
Can I jump in, please?
Sure.
Just a quick question. I think Chief Kinneberg is doing a great job, but on the fire and EMS, Jay, yeah, right there, where is the $500,000 for the property on 51 in this slide?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the first slide where we showed the board, the town board, we showed I don't know, it's like $400,000 additional money under operating. We closed on so that's where it is, but that's only 2 of the 3 properties. So one of the properties is the property over there off of Matthews School Road. The other property is the house over here at East. But since the slide was put together, and if you looked at our most current budget, that's where that $400,000 for that is in there as well. So it's in the board's budget.
Wasn't that titled town management or town management operational expenses or something? Governing board?
It's under governing board operating expenses.
Why would that be under governing board? Please.
Well, it's just property acquisition. We could have put it, it comes out of the general fund money to pay it. We could have put it under the manager's budget. As long as it gets labeled as property acquisition, it does not matter where it goes. We could put it in this budget too. It's a one-time expenditure that all we got to do is make sure we account for it and appropriate it. That's what the auditors want. It doesn't have to be in any.
Shouldn't it be on this slide under capital? Because it's a fire station.
Well, it's property. It could be under this slide under property.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Miller. It seems a little misleading because it makes it seem, that this budget should be probably $500,000 more because the public is going to say, well, the governing board spent $500,000. Well, this was meant for fire and EMS, so it should be here so the public has full transparency.
We can do that.
Please, thank you.
Hazen, I think that was determined when the board completed that budget amendment. So that would have been part of the budget amendment that the board already passed. but we can take a look at it. And if we need to do an
Okay.
updated transfer from fund to fund, we can do that.
It's not a big deal. All right. Questions on fire and EMS before we go to Public Works? All right, so under Public Works, we're showing $47,000 over there in capital under the 21-22 recommended budget, kind of third line down. CJ is proposing some asset management software really to maintain so we can monitor both our streets and stormwater, kind of the age of the pipes, the age of the road, the condition of the road. Half of the money would come from this line item, and then the other half comes from stormwater. And just remember, stormwater is all fee-based, so no general fund money goes into the stormwater. There's $20,000 for 2 lawnmowers. We normally buy one every year. CJ, I think we dropped the ball last year, not appropriating $10,000 for a mower last year. And then we're $6,000 in fleet maintenance for an AC, be able to monitor the new AC Freon standards. Then we're showing 2 people. One is a facilities maintenance technician, and the other one is the landscape maintenance worker. CJ's done a good job factually providing me information about what's changed in the organization since we went from 2 to 3, since we started with 2 maintenance technicians, and then landscape maintenance. I have a list of all the things we've added. I'm happy to go over that now. We can go over it next Monday night. Mayor, do you have a preference?
Next Monday will be fine.
Okay. The paving did not go up. This is an example where we would like to definitely increase this paving by about $500,000 year in, year out. That's about 1 penny. I already mentioned the asset management system. And then we're increasing the vehicle maintenance budget in the police section. So over at fleet management, they segregate each department and how much they charge. One of the things that's happening in police with the police vehicles, the Chargers, which were after you had the Crown Vics, then we went to the Chargers, and now we're really to the SUVs, but the Chargers have not been holding up. Everybody was excited about them at first. They are not holding up, and they're getting very expensive, and we're not replacing them, as quickly as we'd like to, just because each car is, $35,000 plus fitting it. So we're having to increase maintenance to cover these additional costs. All right. Stormwater, here's what I talked about. The other half of the asset management software is $20,000. Again, this is all fee-based. I think, CJ, you've said to me in the next couple of years, we probably need to look at increasing our fees again, but we're not proposing to do that this year. Next one, I think, is solid waste. So $63,000 more in solid waste. It's all tied to the consumer price index. And for that particular, it went up 3.6%. That's $63,000. Davidson, looks to me like 100% of their cost. Davidson has a solid waste fee for this. Huntersville looks like, it's between a third and a half. They have a solid waste fee that pays for probably between 30 to 50%. I don't know the exact percentages, offsetting their costs. I would strongly recommend that we look at solid waste fees in the future. Even the state law, which is 30 years old now, but talks about solid waste should operate as an enterprise fund, which is like water and sewer. And so your fees equal your costs. So people understand exactly how expensive solid waste is. We have never done that, but I would certainly recommend we consider it.
These, and what would the math look like if you had to absorb that $2 million and spread it over the households that are served and businesses, what would the fee be? If you paid 100% of it?
It would be about $200 a year, maybe a little, it's 200, 220. If you divided that, $20 a month would be 240. $18 a month. That's that.
225, 250.
And when is our contract with Republic up? I asked this a lot.
Yeah, it's July of 23 or June 30th of 23. Now, I will say I have not been getting complaints. I personally feel like they have gotten their act together and are doing a much better job. I always think it's healthy to go out for bids. I also like the idea of the paper bag, what Charlotte's doing. I think that's a great idea, because if you guys follow them, we had to do this when we were cleaning up after the storm. Storm debris or leaf and limb, anything that's in a bag, first thing they got to do is tear open the bag and they dump in. So then the bag, they got to put a lot of times they'll put it back in the trash can. Very time consuming. And if I were them, I would want to, this could be a time saver for them. If we went to this program, I think it's an opportunity for them to lower their prices.
I was up at the Hickory Grove Waste Recycling Center or whatever in Charlotte over the weekend to get rid of a antique television. And they are giving away two packs of those bags. Every visit, you can get the bags for free, the huge paper yard waste bags. So they're really encouraging their use. They're giving them, trying to encourage people to use them by giving them away. So you don't even have to buy them. You just go up there and pick them up. Ken, do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I believe I've asked this before, but I forgot what you said. What do our neighboring municipalities in Mecklenburg County do? How many of them charge for this, and who, I guess, or do any? I'm not sure.
Great question. So, and I think about the towns.
Yeah.
The only towns that charge are Huntersville and Davidson. Becky or anybody else, CJ or Becky, do y'all agree with that?
That was everything I found.
Yeah. And what do they charge?
We got to get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Hazen, I've got it if you want me to.
Please do. Yeah.
Sure. Let's see. Davidson, the annual solid waste fee is $201 for a single family. They have a different rate structure for multifamily units. Huntersville is $84 for a single family, but they are proposing some very significant increases that would more than double that rate that their board is currently considering implementing over the next 3 years. So nothing's been set, but staff is proposing something closer to $188 per single family unit.
Thank you.
Be curious if there, I don't know if there's any information on this, if littering and dumping, illegal dumping goes up when you charge this, do people just opt out and take their garbage and throw it down at Squirrel Lake Park or something and not?
Yeah, so they don't have that option. So the way it goes, it shows up on their tax bill.
Yeah.
So you have to pay it, so you can't opt out. That's good.
That's exactly right. Okay, well, I think this is really this is really time to consider that. Just these are round numbers, but if we charged $75 a household, that would raise in the neighborhood of $750,000. Don't hold me to that, but that's basically the penny and a half that we've tossed around here tonight. Okay. What's next? Oh, planning development, very, very flat, bare bones budget in planning. Economic development. Oh, what's next? Economic development. That's where we've put the, some of the CARES Act money in this year's budget. which we distributed. Becky did a great job on the whole program, by the way. And they're asking for $5,000 in 22. All right. Parks and Rec, this is.
I had a quick question on the last slide. What exactly does that $5,000 do? Just curious.
That is for our facade grant program. So it's for businesses in the downtown area can apply for a 50-50 match for improvements to the exterior of their building. And that is managed, kind of received through planning, and then EDAC reviews those applications, makes a recommendation for funding, and then that comes to the board. So some years we end up actually with a little bit more interest than money, and other years the money just rolls back to fund balance because it's not utilized.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Parks and Rec. If the board can see in 2021, well, 2022, 21-22 shows is much more similar to 19-20, and 2021 kind of reflects the COVID, right? It's whatever, plus or minus $100,000 lower. So we're all optimistic that we're going to get back to full operation. The capital expenditures that we're doing some Americans with Disabilities Act improvements down at the community center. And then we've got some playground and swing replacement, as well as a shade structure at Rice Road Park. That's what we've heard about Rice Road. It's doesn't have enough trees and it's hot.
And just as a FYI for the board, when Representative Hunt visited Squirrel Lake Park, Commissioner Miller was there and Commissioner Whitley, but Peter Cook from the Mecklenburg County said that the cost of playground equipment has really escalated, and the one piece that we have there, this kind of large piece at Squirrel Lake Park, he said now would cost about $100,000 to replace. So not too many years ago, I can recall us, funding, $10,000 to replace a swing set or something, and now it's just gone through the roof. Those are all horribly expensive.
All right. This is pretty standard stuff we've done every year. I guess the two things I would lift up is tourism grants. So the board adopted a policy that these tourism grants are 5% of the previous year's revenue. I think we all thought that tourism grant or tourism dollars would always go up, and nobody expected COVID to hit. So that number is lower than this year's budget. And I think it's something to consider for some of these nonprofits, that they rely on us very heavily, and it may be difficult to cut folks back. So, it's maybe something we can talk about next Monday, but if the board wants to go back to this year's number or this year's number plus 5% or whatever the number is, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The second one is Finance Council. We've given them $25,000 for a number of years. On a per capita basis, I think we're the best town in the county. Renee probably needs to correct me on that. But I also think they asked for 34 or 35,000, but I couldn't find the email this afternoon.
I think they asked for $1 per person, right, that lives here. Something like that.
So that's another example of something the board may want to consider if you want to raise that. Again, those are tourism dollars.
Commissioner Miller, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Hazen, I would suggest on this slide, we need a last year's category, this year's category, so that we can make judgment and find the money somewhere else.
All right, great suggestion.
Thank you.
Are there opportunities for ARP funding here and also with Park and Rec?
So the cursory review, that would fall into the same calculation of following their formulas to be able to calculate revenue loss, but then we would have to spend those dollars somewhere. So it's possible. I would just say we may not have good clarification on that in time for the budget adoption, but it's certainly something that we could do a budget amendment once we get all that straightened out with the guidance, and then can bring that back to you guys to make an informed decision.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel like each of these has taken a hard hit because of COVID, so it feels like it would be applicable.
I agree.
Okay, we are, one of the bullets down there, we are putting whatever, close to $47,000 into a facilities maintenance and repair fund. Our buildings are getting older, and it's one of the reasons why we need to add a third person in facilities maintenance, is because 20 years have gone by since Public Works, police, this building, town hall. So our buildings are aging. And then we did not budget any money for contingency. We've done that from time to time where the board will have $25,000 or $50,000. We could do that, but what we traditionally do is if y'all say, okay, let's do X, we just go to the fund balance and appropriate money out of the fund balance.
But Hazen, don't we have a contingency fund on most every project that we?
Yeah, that's a good, so you're right. When we build something, there's like whatever, 5% contingency for overruns or things we're not expecting. Typically this contingency fund line item would be, I don't know, something comes up, a study of a historic piece. I can't even think of a good example, but it's a one-off thing. And the board can say, hey, well, let's use this contingency fund money, and it's just sitting there as a line item that y'all can readily see. That is something that has been done. But what we've typically done is just gone into the fund balance and appropriated money out of the fund balance for purchase of property or, planning studies or something that comes up during the year.
And I feel that with a 34% fund balance, that we don't need a line item contingency fund because of our healthy fund balance savings account. And because for our own projects, we already have a 5 to 15% contingency built in. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right, next slide. So here's the capital CIP. Earlier in the year, we talked about continuing to fund the Ames Street project. And that's about $134,000. $15,000 for defibrillators. Those are old. We need a $30,000 for a microwave dish there at the police department to connect to the tower. Downtown camera project, that's $80,000. The Sam Newell Road multi-use path, that's $184,000. $250 for Irwin's Creek Greenway. Those are recreation fees in lieu of. And then we're showing $325,000 for chillers that we are concerned I would say they're at the end of their half-life. The question is, how much longer are they going to live? We don't want to run into a situation where they've died in the middle of summer. All right, okay.
I have one question, Hazen.
Yes,
I think I saw a liquor license or some type of an application on Ames Street for a brewery. Is that correct? Consent agenda.
Jay, do you want to respond to that? Oh, it's where Motorcycle Place was there for a little bit.
Right, and it was going to be developed just before COVID, and is it coming back?
So that's a different project. The distillery is being proposed on West Charles Street near Lois on the rear. It's a vacant portion of a lot that fronts John Street that has I think it's a medical building today.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that other project comes back though. We were excited about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the last slide is questions. I notice we are 10 minutes before the meeting. We took notes while the board was talking, so hopefully we can make sure we can get back any all the questions y'all have asked. If y'all get off and think, well, I want this information, our job is to provide y'all with information. We are brokers of information. So does anybody have any questions now?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I think asking for a tax increase just coming out of COVID and with $9+ million of ARP money in our coffers is going to be a really difficult lift for, at least for me, to justify why we have to do that. And that's why I was asking, if this ARP money, we had $800,000 set aside for paving, can we use ARP money for that and use that 800,000 for something else without raising taxes? I just think it's going to be, for me personally, it's be really, really difficult to vote for a tax increase at this time.
So Mayor, can I ask a question about that? So are you saying, so if funds are available through ARP, clearly that we can use for them that kind of whatever balance this budget, you're supportive of that and not raising taxes?
Yeah, and I'm certainly aware that if we hire people, that's a recurring expense and something probably that we have taken into consideration. But I can just, I think all of our collective ears are probably burning right now with people saying, holy cow, you got $9+ million and you're raising taxes in addition to your normal budget. It's
right.
Difficult lift, and it's going to be difficult to justify, I think.
So if we get clear direction that the funds are not eligible, does that make you more comfortable?
Yes, but I mean, at some point we're going to have to push back on that, because what are they eligible for? We have this money and we can't spend it. Our hands are so tied. Why distribute the money if they're going to be so overly restrictive? I'm hopeful that we can find places to spend the money that are useful to us, that meet all the rules. And I haven't seen the document that you guys have been referencing yet, but I'm hopeful that we can use it and offset some of our expenses. And I'm one of 7. I don't know what others on the board think, but that's just my opinion.
Well, it sounds like our charge is to get very clear direction on this ARP money to make sure we fully understand and can communicate that to the board what the parameters are of this money.
Mr. Whitley?
Yes, a couple of things, Hazen, and pretty much what you just said. If we come back next Monday, could you give us a line item of this ARP money that we can use and what we can use it for, so that we can identify if you can use it for infrastructure or affordable homes, or fill in some of these other purchases, just something so we can see this, what we can use this money for.
We will do our best,
Okay.
Whitley. It's a 151-page document.
I got you. But just
1 hour. We got a 1 hour presentation from the league tomorrow.
Okay. And also,
I can guarantee you we will do the very best we can.
I appreciate it. Also, if you would let me know when we come back, what recruitment you have done up at this point for the town in recruiting. What have you done so far?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
May I ask a clarifying question to that, Commissioner Whitley? Over what time period are you seeking that information? Is it the last 12 months, last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
Let's do the last 2 years, because that's how long the HR been here, right? Ain't about 2 years.
Approximately. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Last 2 years be good.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other quick comments or questions so we can take a very quick break, Commissioner Urban?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my bigger question is, we've been planning for the increase in fire, public safety, police, to get us up to where we need to be standard wise. So I guess, what are the trade-offs? Solid waste fees, tax increases. But my biggest fear is, well, police were behind. We know that. My biggest fear is that the deputy fire chief is we don't have a plan for succession here. And a deputy fire chief is that next person in line. Not only would he take on the third station, but he's going to take on potentially Chief Kinnerboro's role as well. So, and then Public Works, they are in so dire need of getting some help from that standpoint. So I see this year of sort of the filling the gaps in employment basis out of it. I'd be willing to talk solid waste fees, but I guess the bigger question would be for the board as a whole, is it time to start, anteing up to go ahead and fill these positions that we desperately need?
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Any other comments? I'm sure we'll all think of many before next Monday that we can bring back, but hopefully we can get some clarification on the ARP money. That would be really helpful. All right. Lori, are we coming back on the same number?
Yes, you are. So you can just leave yourselves on if you'd like, or leave and come back. It doesn't matter.
Okay. If you guys have a time for a 3-minute break, so if everybody needs to run to the bathroom or grab a drink or something, go ahead, and we'll be back here in just a minute.
Hey, Charlie. You on mute.
Good evening to you, sir.
You doing okay?
Doing good. Hope you are.
Another day, and I woke up this morning.
Amen. We're blessed.
Another day, one day at a time. Your family doing well?
They are. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
They are.
Did your wife have a good Mother's Day?
She did. Yeah.
We honored all our mothers yesterday at church and gave them a little piece of money to go out to a fancy French restaurant, Hardee's.
All right, folks, it is 7:01. I would ask you to turn your mics and cameras on.
Ooh.
Mayor, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Welcome to our May 10th, 2021 Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting. The board met earlier today to discuss the upcoming budget. And now we'll move on to the 7 o'clock meeting. I once again remind everyone that due to the governor's COVID-19 orders, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. Town of Matthews is committed to transparency and robust public participation during these challenging times. Once again, the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record, and they will also raise their hand or otherwise visually indicate their vote. Move on to agenda item number 2. The invocation tonight will be from Ken McCool.
Tonight I'm going to read just a short quote from Thomas Jefferson. The art of governing consists of simply being honest, exercising common sense, following principle, and doing what is right and just. I believe it's important that tonight and every night that we meet, we make decisions on behalf of our great town, that we follow these principles, and that we stay true to our values and morals. It's a great privilege to serve our community, so let's make sure we're doing what's best for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner McCool. Jay, if you could put up the flag, we'll do the pledge. Can anybody see the flag? I'm not seeing it. You'll see it? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to agenda item number 4, recognize the National Public Works Week. I'm going to read the proclamation. National Public Works Week 2021, Stronger Together. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality and life and well-being of the people of the town of Matthews. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees from state and local governments and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Matthews to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their community. Whereas the week 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week. Now, therefore, I, the Honorable John F. Higdon, Mayor of Matthews, do hereby designate the week of May 16 through 22, 2021 as National Public Works Week. And I urge all our people to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies and activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the town of Matthews, North Carolina to be affixed this 10th day of May, 2021.
Very good.
Okay. Hold, please. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here. CJ, did you want to comment?
He should.
Is CJ not, Lori, is CJ on the call?
I'm sorry, Mayor. He might be having some technical difficulty as well. Perhaps you should just move on to the next item.
Okay. I'm sure CJ is grateful for the proclamation. We'll move on to the next proclamation, agenda item number 6, recognize National Police Week and Peace Officers Memorial Day. Whereas Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agencies serving the town of Matthews, including the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, North Carolina Alcohol Law Enforcement, Mecklenburg County Alcohol Beverage Control, and the Town of Matthews Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the town of Matthews. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agencies, and that members of our law enforcement agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agencies of Mecklenburg County unceasingly provide a vital public service, and therefore we do hereby proclaim the week of May 9th through 15th, 2021 as Police Week, call upon all citizens of Matthews to observe the 15th of May, 2021 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who through their courageous deeds have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or become disabled in the performance of duty. Let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Matthews to be affixed this 10th day of May, 2021.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Whitley?
Yes, if you would you modify that top part and add the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, because they are assigned to Mecklenburg County too.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to move on now to, I don't believe Chief Pennington is available. Is that correct, Lori?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 6, introduce Finance Director Theresa Folk. And Becky, you will do this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. I'm very happy to be introducing our new finance director to you this evening. Theresa Folk comes to us from the town of Newport, which is in Carteret County. She has been in local government for over 12 years. She worked for Carteret County prior to moving to the town of Newport. And she brings just an absolute wealth of experience to the position and has certifications as a local government finance officer, a budget officer, as well as a purchasing officer. And apparently those are not easy certifications to obtain. She went through a competitive hiring process to be selected for the position. And we are very pleased to have her joining us. She is relocating here. The husband will be joining here within the next year as he finishes up his career in local government. So big move for them, but we are very excited to have her. Want to help you put a face with a name. I know we normally do this in person, so this isn't quite the same, but you will start to see Theresa monthly for the budget reports. And of course, she will start to play a major role in budgets and all the financial management from this point forward. So please join me in welcoming her. And Theresa, if you want to say a few words, you are welcome to.
Welcome, Theresa.
Thank you. And I am very happy to be here in the town of Matthews and look forward to all the great things to come and getting to know each of you individually as a board, and hopefully, like I say, the COVID stuff will be better soon and we can all meet in person. But I do look forward to working with the town of Matthews and help to make things better and have a long career here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome. We're glad to have you. And I know Becky's especially happy to have you because she's been doing your job for, for the last several months. So
yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, receive information on milkweed for Monarch's pledge from Debbie Foster. Hello, Debbie.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me this evening, Mayor and Commissioners. You know a little about this because I sent an email recently, but I just wanted to give you an update because the project is coming up in about a week. So last fall, Mayor Higdon was approached by one of the Matthews residents who said, can we do something for Monarchs? And there was a trickle down effect, and eventually it came to the Appearance and Tree Advisory Committee, and we thought that this was definitely in our wheelhouse, that this was something we could easily do something about. And if you don't know, the monarch population has declined by about 95% at this point. And there are some experts who feel that extinction is imminent. There's just nothing that can be done. But I know quite a few people, myself included, who have started growing monarch for milkweeds and are seeing monarchs come through our yard for the first time ever and hatch out. So this is a positive sign. It's something small that we can do. They're specialist animals. That means that they have something that they need, and if that is not there, then they simply cannot reproduce, and that need is milkweed. They feed on it and they lay their eggs on it, and their young are raised on it. So if milkweed does not exist, neither do the monarchs. So the Appearance and Tree Advisory Committee contacted Lisa Tompkins of Carolina Heritage Nursery and its Elemental Landscape Design. Lisa's the one who redesigned 3 of the town entrances. She has a number of other projects. She designed the Veterans Park Memorial Gardens, which I think are just spectacular, using all native plants and very beneficial plants for us. And we were able to work with her based on the budget that we were given by the town, and we can pay for this project with that. We do intend to recoup the costs, so we are charging for the milkweed a nominal fee of $5. And that way we can get the budget back in place to do this again. And we hope to make it an annual event because we think it is very beneficial. We owe huge thanks to Matthews United Methodist Church because for the second project, since I became involved with the Appearance and Tree Committee, they have allowed us to use their property to do this. So you may remember that a year and a half ago, we had a tree store through Trees Charlotte, and they let us use their site for that. And now they're letting us use their parking lot again for the Milkweed for Monarch sale. So this is going to be a hands-off type of sale. People will drive up, we'll have volunteers that are just pointing them in the right direction. They pay for the milkweed that they want, and we're having an all-cash sale. And then volunteers will load their car. We've got a 10 plant limit per person. We could only afford about 250 plants with the $1,000 that we had. So we wanted to limit it so that as many people got this as possible. We've been publicizing this event mostly through social media, but Parks and Rec has also put it on their website. It's on the town website. The Matthews Beacon has promoted it. I saw it just this morning, I think, in one of their calendars. And I've just written an article and talked to Maureen Keith about this for the Matthews Mint Hill Weekly. So we hope to sell out very quickly. My prediction is that it will take about an hour. I don't think we'll need the 2 hours that's allotted for this. It's a test, we'll see, but it is certainly a good thing for us to do. So having said that, are there any questions about this project?
I've got a question, Debbie. How big do these plants get when they're fully grown?
They are about 15 inches, and they tend to stay in nice self-contained clumps. And they've got a beautiful bright orange flower.
Commissioner Miller, you had a question?
Sun, part shade, full shade.
Yeah, it's definitely a full sun plant. In a perfect world, which we no longer have due to any number of issues, you would have found these growing in a ditch on the side of the road. So they're really hardy plants in what we would call lean conditions, but we don't see it very often in the wild.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I spoke to somebody this weekend that planted milkweed last year and saw monarchs in their yard, Matthews resident this year. So it currently works. So yeah, if you have the ability to do that, or please tell others, we want to make sure this is a successful event. All right. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to agenda item number 8. I guess we have the great honor of having Congressman Dan Bishop with us tonight. And Dan, I like to always tell people whenever your name comes up of, we both attended South Meck in the early 80s, and as did Jeep Bryant, who went on to become president of the Arts and Science Council, Rhonda Cheeks on the school board, Susan Rodriguez McDowell was a county commissioner, and I'm mayor, but the one that soared the highest of all of us is Congressman Bishop, who after many years in the North Carolina legislature went on and was successfully elected to Congress. So we're very honored to have you here today, Dan. And I thought maybe you could just give us an overview of how things are going during your first term as congressman, and then we have a few questions I think some of the commissioners would like to ask you. So welcome, Congressman Bishop.
Thank you, Mayor Higdon. I was awfully kind of you to say. I'm not so sure that any of that is it might be overstated, but I'm delighted to be representing you in Congress. I'm glad to be with you this evening. I'm sorry that it's been so long. I think in part, I came in, as you said, John, in a special election in September 2019. And so really got a few months of somewhat normalcy in Washington before the pandemic, but it's been a full year. And in any event, I'm glad to be having a chance to see you all. And I know most of you, but there are a couple whose names I know and haven't had occasion yet to meet. I'm glad to be with you, all of you as well, all you commissioners, mayor, and manager Blodgett. I thought that I would just hit a few highlights of things that are going on in Washington, and we confront from the national perspective and the way it may intersect with the interests of Matthews, and then perhaps let's have a discussion, take questions or comments, Mayor. I'd be glad to do that if you'd like. And I know you all's time is limited because you've got a big agenda to take care of. One thing that I think will be of interest to you is, of course, the American Rescue Plan passed by Congress. The Biden administration piece of legislation didn't have a lot of uniformity on that, but it provided $350 billion in new funding for state and local governments, $130 billion for local governments, counties, cities, and smaller local governments. There's apparently there's a new, just today or in the last day or so, a new estimate out by the House Oversight Committee concerning estimates of allocations. You all may have discussed this before. You may have information I didn't, but I'm told this is new information. There's an estimated allocation to Matthews of $9.7 million. My understanding, though, is that local governments with a population of less than 50,000, which I believe still would be Matthews, it receives funds from the state governments in proportion to population. So there's a pass through rather than making a direct grant from the federal government. If I'm incorrect about that, and if you'd have a direct allocation, then I've got information I can furnish you guys about details of how you make your application to the federal government. And in any event, whether you're a fan or not of that particular legislation, I know you all are interested in what might be a budget impact on you. So that's the estimate in any event that the House Oversight Committee has put forward today on behalf of Matthews and as one of many communities. I shouldn't have launched into this without first taking a moment to introduce you guys to my district director who's on the call, Liz Driver. You see down there, Liz, and wave at the camera a little bit. Liz has joined my office early this year, and we are, one thing, Mayor, you mentioned, as you mentioned, and we talked about, since I'm new to Congress, when I jumped in September, we didn't have any staff in place. We had constituent needs that needed to be addressed. So we sort of hastened and got the constituent services part taken care of. But as I entered my my first full term this year, we're working to reorient our district office. Liz is available to you all. We're going to be spending time in the community. Caroline Winchester is a field rep, and Liz runs the office. We have several other staff, but they are as much of their time as possible out in the community. And so whenever we can be of assistance, you guys would like to have somebody from our office, even when I'm unavailable, or someone in your community for an event, we are going to be on the lookout for those and active about doing that. So at least you've had an opportunity to see Liz's face and to know she's working with us. I thought I'd mention a couple of things I know are having an impact on local communities. Liz and Caroline helped arrange a roundtable with Union County law enforcement agencies. And although not, I guess you have a little piece in Union County, but in any event, we were talking about a number of things that are affecting the interests of law enforcement and community safety, stretching community resources. We do have a fairly significant crisis at our southwestern border. We have folks, unaccompanied minors and family units with very small children who are coming into the country under federal law in fairly large numbers, 172,000 apprehensions by Border Patrol in March. That's the highest level in 20 years. For a month, we have reason to believe, although that data we got another day or two before we get April numbers, but we anticipate that will continue at a slightly even increased rate from that for April. And as those folks are coming in, they're being processed, and the unaccompanied minors are going into the custody of Health and Human Services. There are about 16,000 beds for these minors on the border. They are increasing over time very rapidly to about 60,000. They turn over every 24 days roughly, and those kids are being sent into the country. Same for families with small children are being put on board buses or aircraft and going to places in the United States. You may be seeing impacts on your community services of demands of that as folks who really, in most cases, are not able to read or write English or speak English, will be coming into communities across our state as well. We also, as a result of, as this is happening at our border, are seeing drug interdictions, drugs coming in. They're seizing. It's estimated a 233% increase, for example, in fentanyl seizures. We're told by Union County law enforcement that is having a very noticeable impact in Union County. I presume in Mecklenburg. I have not had occasion to speak with law enforcement in Mecklenburg, but I guess the other aspect of that is that cartels, criminal cartels operating on the beyond the southwestern border are reportedly making $10 to $14 million per day in trafficking people and drugs. But those cartel operations actually, according to Union County law enforcement and some news stories, are having an effect in North Carolina. They're operating, we're told that there's a major hub for Mexican cartels in Atlanta. Charlotte is a subsidiary hub, but those operations are ongoing and they present the danger to community safety, of course, where you are. So I want you to know that I'm doing everything I can to prevail on the Biden administration to work to resume some better control to sort of blunt this. A lot of the effort so far has been building the capacity for bringing people in, and many of us are imploring the Biden administration to work hard on methods to reduce the flow. So that's going to be something that's with us for some time. You also have heard there's a Biden administration initiative in Congress and legislation, and well, there's no legislation yet, but a plan to bring an infrastructure bill to a vote in Congress. It's called an infrastructure bill. I think a lot of communities around the country probably going to be looking to an opportunity for there to be a surge in federal expenditure for infrastructure. The problem with plans that have been talked about so far, from my perspective, is that 93% of the spending is on things other than what I think we typically regard as infrastructure, leaving only about 5% on roads and bridges, another 2% on some other items like broadband and the like. But there's been some discussion about what constitutes infrastructure and some things on spending plans by the Biden administration on, for example, community healthcare services and some things like that that are not particularly usually thought of as infrastructure. But I would say stay tuned. I think there are a lot of municipalities in the communities that I serve that are interested in whether we'll see a significant infrastructure impact and infrastructure spending impact on things you more typically may regard as infrastructure. I hope we'll work something out to that effect. But that, of course, is a pretty hot topic. I'll leave aside the discussion of the tax increases that are proposed. That's of interest to a lot of people. I don't know if it's directly significant to your mission there on behalf of the town of Matthews. Let's see what else. I guess I think I'll skip that in the interest of kind of keeping things relatively short. Let me just stop and see whether you all want to have there are a couple of things here I could discuss, but I think rather than I use up all the time speaking to you, I'll stop and see if I can hear things that are of interest to you, and if there are specific requests or things you'd like me to be doing on your behalf in Washington.
Dan, I've got a real quick question. Have you been briefed or heard anything on the ransomware with the pipeline situation?
I have not received a briefing on that yet. I am on the Homeland Security Committee, so I anticipate that'll happen not too far away. The one thing I guess, and I think this has been a matter of public record, if I'm not mistaken, that there's a belief that it comes from a Russian source, not Russian government. So the Biden, I think that's done now that I'm thinking about it, I think that was public comment. The president was saying that the Russian government needs to take responsibility for things going on its territory. I really don't have up-to-date information, John. I'm sorry about that.
I know the gas prices have already started to escalate as a result. Who had some questions? I believe Commissioner Urban, did you have a question or two?
I did, and Dan, nice to see you again.
Good to see you, John.
It's been a while. You answered actually a couple of my questions because you must have been filled in with some of my information. But I do have one concern. You know that the town board, myself, we always harangued on you when you were in state legislation about local rule and
Right.
locally run. And so now you're in a state election situation, and now the federal government wants to talk to the states about taking over local election law and things like that. So same pushback we always had you at the state level. What's the state doing at the level of talking to the federal government about that state election law?
Yeah, it's a good question, John. And just about the overall picture there. And I was a Mecklenburg County Commissioner back in the day, and so I appreciate the perspective of the state versus local. I do know, I will say that by virtue of being in the legislature, and I'm not to pick on that point, John, but just to at least touch on it, I do think there's an important protection for freedom in the fact that laws that are made in the legislature go through a bicameral process with multiple committees. It takes a fairly large number of people to decide them. I probably depart ways to some degree on the note. There are things that I think are appropriately local to be decided, and there are things that are appropriately. I'm not one. I was talking with the Union County Commissioner Dennis Raitt the other day. We had a similar point or exchange, because Dennis is always one for saying that he'd like all the decisions to be left to the locals. Some should, for sure. More should probably, but there is value and there's significance to that bicameral legislature and that complicated process that goes on in Raleigh. To the bigger point, John, I certainly, I think the same thing applies on the issue that you brought up about HR 1. There is a constitutional structure, and in that case, the Constitution's default rule is, and the rule in practice for all 200 X number of years of our existence since the passage of the Constitution has been that states enact election regulation. Now, there is, you got the electors clause in one part and the electors clause governing the presidential election, electors clause governing the election of members of Congress. A lot of people are under the impression that only states can do that because it got to be a big issue during the campaign or during the election season about the fact that election officials throughout the country were making changes to state procedure without state legislative permission. But so if everybody got the notion in their mind, well, states decide this. It is true that the Constitution does allow for the federal government to step in and make or change state regulation, election regulation, but it has never been done in a comprehensive way under that authority. The only area where federal government has ever ventured in so far is the Voting Rights Act, which is frankly enacted not only pursuant to that power, but also the 15th Amendment concerning equal voting rights, and to eliminate and stop and deter and end discrimination particularly against Black Americans in the exercise of the franchise. That was very important. But now what HR 1 does contemplate, and I oppose it fiercely, but it contemplates the federal government dictating all kinds of processes about voting. And I guess I left one thing out. There also was the big motor voter law in the early 90s, which was designed to improve the ability to register and the like. But for the most part, that's been left to state legislatures as the Constitution contemplates by default. The biggest concern I have is that HR 1 would forbid, in effect, would forbid the use of voter ID. And of course, the citizens of North Carolina have amended our state constitution to require it. So there are a lot of changes in there. I get your point, and it's simply a simple way to go about it to say local control is better. In many ways, that's the right instinct. But in this case, it also has the added imprimatur of the constitutional structure and the way it's designed. So I'm going to continue to resist that in Washington. Obviously, I'm in the party that's in the minority in the House, and the House is very much a majoritarian institution. Majority runs things through. What we, of course, will see is the degree to which the filibuster remains in effect in the Senate. So far, indications are that it will, and the degree to which that bill and others as controversial as that, of which there have been very many passing in the House, whether those will get 60 votes or not. So it's a time in which change, and I know there are members on this board who disagree with me on politics, I'm sure, and I respect all our differences, but it is, to be sure, a very consequential moment in Washington. And if the number of pieces of legislation passed in the first 100 days, if they all became law, we would see extraordinary changes in the way our country is governed, and I think that some of them would catch a lot of people by surprise.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, are there any other questions? Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, Jeff Miller here. My question is there any way we can reverse the need for a court order to release police body camera footage? I feel that it fosters a mistrust in police that is based on assumptions that the police are hiding something. And this is most recently evidenced in Elizabeth City.
Jeff, what controls the release or withholding of body cam video is a state law. It was passed when I was in the General Assembly. I will say that one of the desires there, Jeff, was, or one of the I say desires, I mean the people who designed that law and generally were reasonably satisfied with the way it worked, were concerned about the politicization of incidents when that are potentially controversial, and there's video available. They did not want to put, for example, the town commissioners under the glare of and immediate decision making, and there can be reasons, law enforcement reasons, not immediately to release video in every instance, and so you know, and there can be some public safety reasons to control the time of the release until you've made preparations if you believe it might trigger unrest and the like. Some of those interests, in my personal view, make sense. You know, on the other hand, with the way things are, I think we're moving toward a time when just about everything that happens is on video, and at that point in time, maybe the interest in holding this police video begins to wane. So I think your point's well taken, Jeff, and certainly something that ought to be looked at again. It is, however, something that I don't have any influence over at this point, other than I'm going to go spend some time with the state legislators on June 1 and 2, just to catch up with them on a variety of things. But I will mention that that's come up, Jeff. I know that you may want to reach out to your state legislators. I guess it's Ms. Hunt and who serves you in the Senate? I'm not quite sure right now. The state Senate, it's either
Jeff Jackson.
Yeah. So you know, that might be something to take up. If there's a reason to make adjustments to that law, Jeff, that would be the way it is. It provided a process for the video to be released at the discretion, I think, of the police department, or you know, there's I can't remember exactly how it works, but ultimately you have to go get a Superior Court judge. That can happen, by the way, Jeff, very quickly if the municipality desires to do it. You could. I do understand, though, your point may be, I just think every item of body camera video ought to be available to the public at all times, and if that's your view, that's your view. But that's how it would have to be resolved by the state legislature.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Whitley.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Congressman. I want to personally thank you. Several years ago, I came to you and asked you for some help for Crestdale community, and you were so gracious to give $125,000 for town of Matthew for Crestdale improvement. Well, we have finished the Crestdale Heritage side. We improved it, made it 10-foot wide sidewalk. It's a great trail. I would just want to invite you to come by one day and look at it and see where your money went. But it's a great improvement for connectivity from downtown all the way over to the sports complex. But I just want to personally, I think this is the first time I had the opportunity to thank you for your help with that, and just invite you to come by and give me a call, and I'd love to show you where your money went on that.
Thank you, Reverend Whitley. And let me say, it's been a while since I've had an opportunity to be in your church, and I'd love to have a chance to do that again as well. I remember
we stayed open. We did not close during the whole
year.
We went down to 10 people, and we're back up to 100. But we have a 9:45 service each Sunday. You're more than welcome anytime you're in town to come and worship with us.
Well, I will make it a point, and Liz will help me make it a point, make sure that we get an opportunity to come out and see. I would like to see what happened in Crestdale, and you showed me what we were able to do there. I was happy to I think, joined, I believe it was, I think Mr. Brawley at the time, and I got some money together and out from the state. And perhaps, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we could get some infrastructure money and redouble our efforts at this point from the federal government? I hope we can. But it certainly is good to see, sir. When the meeting first came on and I spotted you, that was frankly my first thought. It's been a while since we'd had an opportunity to share greetings. So thank you, Reverend Whitley.
Thank you. Love to your family as well, too.
Thank you, sir, and to yours.
You know, Dan, during most of the time, their kitchen has been closed over at Reverend's Church, and so I've lost about 40 pounds since.
I'm down a few pounds too, John, so it's time for me to come in and see what we can do.
Do we have any other comments or questions for the Congressman?
Thank you, Mayor. In the absence of any, let me just finish by saying thank you for this time to renew acquaintance. I look forward to having a chance to do it in person soon. And we're going to try to stay in touch with you through Liz and Caroline so that we can be more responsive to your needs and not be just, you know, every once a year or something like that. I think we ought to be in touch with you more often, and we're going to try to do that. We'll try not to be pests, but.
Oh, that'd be great. That would be much appreciated. We try to be respectful of your time as well. We know you're very busy, but when you're in town, if you could stop by, we intend to start meeting in person very soon. So hopefully by June or July at the latest, we'll be meeting in person again, and we'd love to have you come to one of our live and in-person meetings. So
I know that we're all looking forward to resuming some sense of normalcy. It's been a long time. Thank you for what you do for the town of Matthews, and thank you for your time.
thank you, Dan and Liz, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, receive an update on COVID-19 from Chief Kinnenberg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Hope you guys don't mind. I'm not coming to you by video tonight. Today is day 423 of EOC related activity with COVID. Current counts in Mecklenburg County, we've had 110,901 cases as of this morning, with 956 deaths, and currently we have 17 clusters in outbreak status, and that's any location with 2 or more people. Matthews has 106 residents in isolation in 79 different locations. We do have good news this week. Over the last 2 weeks, the case count has only increased by about 1.8%, which is about half the previous 2-week increase, and 956 deaths represents a 2-week increase of about 2.1%, which is down from 3.75 the previous 2 weeks. So things are, the major matrices are headed in the right direction. We continue to see improvement in all of the key metrics related to COVID under the state's impact coding system. Mecklenburg has been coded as having significant impact due to COVID, but all the counties that touch Mecklenburg are still coded as having substantial impact. The 7-day new case average of 179 and the positivity rate 6%, and the new cases per 100,000 of 112 still put us in the moderate substantial community spread concern range, but are down slightly from the previous 2 weeks. The number of patients hospitalized with COVID diagnosis is flat from the previous 2 weeks, and the number of people seeking COVID testing continues to decline. Public vaccination efforts continue. Vaccine supply exceeds demand, and in many of the clinics are seeing little response. Many younger people who were initially hesitant have become apathetic about getting the vaccine. The town of Matthews, in conversation with Public Health and Novant, has decided not to pursue any further clinics sponsored by us. Instead, we're going to allow the hospital systems, pharmacy systems to handle the current demand. Mecklenburg County Health is expanding its Homebound resident vaccine program to 5 days a week, and our EMTs are continuing to play a role there. About 41% Mecklenburg County residents over 18 are partially vaccinated, and 35 are fully vaccinated. By comparison, Mecklenburg's 35 compares to a 28% full vaccination rate for North Carolina and a 32% full vaccination rate for the U.S. We've seen steady decline over the last 4 weeks in the number of people being vaccinated, with new first shots falling below 100,000 statewide for the second consecutive week. The health department is exploring strategies to increase the vaccination percentage. Educational efforts are underway across the county targeted at under-vaccinated population segments, and we have been at the table for some of those discussions. The unemployment rate in Mecklenburg is 4.7%, compared with 3.7% for the same time last year, with many employers reporting a shortage of applicants. So that ends my report. I'll entertain any questions that council may have.
Have any questions for Chief Kinneberg? Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Chief, are any of the adult care facilities in Matthews in outbreak status right now?
We have, Carrington has, I believe, 5 as of today, and Matthews Glen has 1 or 2.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner McCool?
Excuse me. I guess maybe it's a question for Hazen and Rob, but what can we do from the town's perspective to kind of start encouraging people to get the vaccine, or what we can put on the website, or, you know, what we can put on social media? You know, we're seeing this stagnation with vaccines, and, you know, I think the CDC said that it's not looking like we're going to get to herd immunity. So, you know, what can we do to help at least bring our community closer to that?
So a couple of weeks ago, it's a good question, Commissioner McCool. A couple of weeks ago, I sent an email to Gibby Harris to say, what are the percentages in Matthews town limits? Now, some of the danger is we'll get zip code 28105 zip code as opposed to Matthews. And I said, I'd take 28105 if we had to take it, just because it's probably representative of the town. I haven't got any information back from her, and I followed up with an email last week for that, so we could get numbers to see, you know, are we at 70%? You know, what's the herd immunity levels? We don't have any statistics at this point.
I thought I had seen that the county released a map that said 28105 is at 44%. I saw that last week, but that was for one shot, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, I can send that to you if you need me to, but I saw that last week, I believe. Maybe
it's a little frustrating that they don't give us that information right away, because it's readily available. I'm sure they have it.
Oh yeah.
Certainly by zip code anyway.
And the Matthews area has been one of the higher percentage vaccinated areas of the county. We had a conversation with Jason at Novant last Friday. The hospitals are seeing the same thing that other clinics are seeing. Their permanent vaccination site on Independence is capable of 5,000 a day, but they're seeing fewer than 1,500 a day. The hospitals are going to turn to the primary care physicians to administer vaccine. One of the big issues is reluctance or mistrust. So by going the primary care physician route, there's a hope that those who have not been vaccinated have a relationship with a primary care physician and they might feel better. We've talked about doing community events that are on a more micro scale, and talking to Red Brick Partners, some of the other restaurants in town. But you know, none of them are garnering numbers that are going to get us to keep herd immunity right now. So we keep pushing the education event, but the opportunities are there. We've got 1 or 2 generations that are reluctant. That's what's holding us back.
Well, I'd like to see at least the town do at least have some sort of information or something we can put on the website and social media, just so our constituents at least has that out there.
We can do
and
that.
we can get you shot again, so you can do a PSA. Maureen, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we do have some information on our website that I keep up to date, and the county has a pretty comprehensive communications plan, and we're working together with them on that and try to push out the messages as we see fit for the town. But we'll continue to highlight it on social media as well.
Thank you.
Rob, have you heard anything early on? There was some talk in the legislature, I can't speak tonight, of mandating the vaccinations for college students or even, in public schools. Have you heard anything about that?
Just what's been in the news. I haven't heard anything directly.
Fairly controversial, but they do mandate, I think you have to have a polio shot or something like that when you go to, there's certain shots that you have to go to public schools right now. So that was discussed at one time. I don't know where that went. Are there any other questions for Rob or Maureen or Hazen? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Rob. As always, we appreciate it. Good report. Mr. Town Manager, do we have anything to be added to the agenda?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Lori, do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
We'll move on to number 12. Entertain a motion to recess our regular meeting for public hearings on applications to amend the Unified Development Ordinance and land use map of the town of Matthews.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner McCool, a second from Commissioner Urban. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I vote yes. So we are now recessed. Jay, can you please introduce the planning board members in attendance tonight?
Sure. We have our chair, Mike Foster, with us, our vice chair, Natasha Edwards, Jonathan Clayton, Tom Dorsey, Jim Johnson, Carrie Lamson, Mike Rowan, and then our two newest members should be with us this evening. That would be Sarah Walker and Howie Labner, as well as Prayag Patel and Miranda Stujanki. And with that, I will turn it over to Rob. Well, after you introduce the item, Mayor. Thank you.
Sure. So we'll go to item 12A, motion 2021-1, a text amendment to the UDO to allow a 6-foot fence in the front yard setback along major thoroughfares with proper setbacks and vegetative screening. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Yes, so this is a text amendment, and I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I can share my screen. I have a brief presentation. Share screen. Sorry, technical difficulties, of course. So anyway, there we go. Okay. This is a text amendment regarding fence height along major corridors in the town of Matthews. The UDO amendment is to allow 6-foot fences in the front yard setback along major thoroughfares with proper setbacks and vegetative screening. A little bit of background on this item is staff was directed by the Board of Commissioners to look at the possibility to allow a higher fence higher than 4 feet, which is what is currently permitted in the front yard setback, along major roadway corridors in the town to give residents some relief from increased noise and traffic noise and increased privacy. After researching the issue, staff found a few communities in North Carolina that do allow 6-foot fences in height in the front yard setbacks along busier roadways. However, a taller fence typically requires the property owner to do additional mitigation steps, such as set the fence back from the right of way and have a vegetative buffer in front of the fence. The proposal before you for the public hearing is to permit a 6-foot fence in the front yard setback of residentially zoned properties along major thoroughfares. Those are defined on the zoning map to be set back 15 feet from the right of way and screened with evergreen shrubs every 5 feet. This is a starting point. I have some discussion points at the end of the presentation that and we'll be happy to entertain questions and comments from the board to further either limit, impose other conditions on what is proposed. Here's just a few of the communities that we researched. The city of High Point permits a 6-foot fence within 15 feet of the thoroughfare or collector street right of way. Town of Cary requires a permit for a fence that's taller than 42 inches and requires evergreen shrubs to be placed an average of 5 feet, and they must be 24 inches tall at installation. City of Wilmington has a unique approach in their residential districts, except their historic areas. Front yard fences are permitted to be up to 6 feet if they're adjacent to a thoroughfare, which is defined in their technical standards and specifications manual. And a variance is granted by the Board of Adjustment considering a number of factors, including a setback and opacity of the fence. So what staff has come up with as again, as a starting point, is we've taken appropriate elements from different communities researched, including setbacks from Wilmington and High Point. We have proposed an anchoring to external definition of a thoroughfare, as does Wilmington, and screening from the town of Cary. So I'm just going to read the proposed text amendment, and then I've got some follow-up information to go along with that. Within the single-family residential districts, R20, R15, R12, R9, RMH, RVS, no fence or wall may exceed 4 feet in height in any required front setback, or no more than 6 feet within any required side or rear yard, with the following exception. For new or substantially rebuilt fences adjacent to a major thoroughfare right-of-way, fences may be up to 6 feet in the required front setback if the following criteria are met. The fence is set back at least 15 feet from the right-of-way, and evergreen shrubs need to be placed an average of 5 feet along the fence frontage. Evergreen shrubs must be at least 24 inches tall at installation. Okay, so what is a major thoroughfare? This is sort of the crux of part of the main crux of the issue is where we're talking about having this implemented. These are the major thoroughfares mapped on the zoning map. They include Idlewild Road, Pineville Matthews Road, Matthews Township Parkway, Matthews Mint Hill Road, McKee Road, a portion of McKee Road, Monroe Road, John Street, small portion of Sam Newell and Margaret Rollis Road, and our portion of Sardis Road that is in the town limits. I have some sample photos. They're admittedly kind of the nice looking photos, but this is kind of the idea here of having a 6-foot privacy fence with evergreen shrubs. Also, I'd like to point out that our existing perimeter screening requirements require, well, one of the options is to have a wall or a fence and a 10-foot planting bed with 5 large trees, 2 small trees, and 20 shrubs. So our existing perimeter screening requirements are substantially greater than what is being proposed just for a privacy fence along a right of way. This is in the town of Cary. It's 6-foot fence along Cary Parkway. We've got some really tiny, small evergreens. It looks like they're just babies. But this is kind of the look that is created by their regulations. I also wanted to point out we have a number of 6-foot fences in. They're non-conforming at this time, but this is the corner of Sardis and Matthews Township Parkway. And as you can see, it is it's set back from the right of way, and it's hard to notice, but at the same time, it is in their front yard setback and is non-conforming. So some of the discussion points that I wanted to bring up is, first of all, this seems like maybe an easy issue to tackle, fence height in the front yard, but there's a lot of subtleties that go along with it that I wanted to bring some of these discussion points to the board's attention and have a conversation to see what thoughts and questions the boards may have. So one of the ideas is to further limit the number of specific major thoroughfares. As you saw on the thoroughfare map, there are a number of roads that are major thoroughfares. We could limit those further. We could only apply this to applicable certain zoning districts, residential zoning districts. Adjusting the proposed setback. Right now, it's proposed to be 15 feet, but maybe 10 feet or 5 feet or something greater is appropriate. We could also define the corridors by number of lanes, four lanes, 5 lanes, 4-lane divided. There's the need for spacing of vegetative screening, maybe further clarification where it's located. Additional setbacks for gates and driveways. That means, so like if I'm getting my Amazon truck delivered to me, I don't want to have them waiting with their tail end hanging out on Highway 51, waiting for me to open the gate. Also, distance from the back of sidewalks. Not all of our sidewalks are in the right of way. Some are in easements. And a limit on fencing materials may be appropriate. Wood rather than chain link. So I'm gonna scroll back up to the text. And now what I'd like is any comments, questions. Happy to take those from the board at this time. And we can go from there.
I'll start. I do think that the list of roads is too great. I think I'm thinking, Matthews Mint Hill Road. I would hate to see that road, wall to wall fences. I don't think it's really necessary there. So I would like to see a little tighter definition of where these might be appropriate. Are there other questions or comments? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. Rob, the photo that you showed of Cary looked like it was the fence was 15 feet off of curb. And
right.
What I'm confused about, help me understand, you're saying 15 feet off the right of way. And I believe that Matthews Township Parkway 51 bypass has already a 25-foot right of way where you can't do anything in that section. Is that 25 plus 15 and it would be 40 feet off of curb?
Yes, it would be 15 feet from the property line or the right of way line. So it would be set back fairly far.
So 40 feet, I guess what I'm having trouble, that's a large infringement on personal property. And what if I put up a fence, why do I need 15 feet off of right of way to put in Leland cypress or a shrub that won't be 15 feet wide?
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think the 15 feet was taken from another community, and it may be inappropriate for the town of Matthews. So that is something, and actually I agree. I think it needs to be reduced to something a little more manageable, so that we're not pushing people's front yards back, well, 15 feet.
I understand that if you want to put a fence for privacy and we want them to decorate it in the front and maybe manage that, but 15 feet is a large envelope. 6, 8, 10 would maybe be better suited and open for debate.
Thank you.
I totally agree, Commissioner Miller. Another comment I was going to make. 15 feet seems excessive.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Urban.
Yeah, just a couple things, Rob. Is one, I'd like the police to comment on this action as to whether or not, they're driving down the road, they can't see through the fence, they're chasing somebody, they jump over the fence, they can't see into yards. What are the unintended consequences here from this standpoint? I agree with you on additional setback for driveways. Yes, we wouldn't want something sticking into the street or blocking the sidewalk. A material list, I think, would probably be appropriate in this case, or maybe there's a standard set, because you could have fence, brick, cementitious board, stone, stucco. Then it's going to look pretty nasty really quickly. You hope that the shrubbery can hide it all. So that's something to think about from that aspect of it. And I guess one of the questions would be, if the fence is just to keep children in, if that's really what the issue is, maybe these are just picket fences that allow airspace and they're fairly transparent, and then the shrubbery fills in over time. I agree with the mayor on location of thoroughfares. We need to sort of vet that. And then I'll be devil's advocate. I like the 15 feet because if I'm walking along the sidewalk and that fence is too close to the sidewalk, so to speak, there's that sense of being enclosed and pushed towards the street edge. It may make that whole pedestrian effect of walking along the sidewalk along the street kind of intimidating, and you may get an adverse effect. That's it.
Commissioner Urban, can I ask a follow-up? I just want to, for a point of clarification, so you're bringing up the hodgepodge perspective that if every owner along the frontage puts up a different style fence, it's going to look all over the place. It's not going to look uniform. Whereas a lot of subdivisions that put up a wall or a fence at the rear yards, it's uniform.
Correct.
Right of way. So are you suggesting that we have a standard that if you want this in the front setback, then here's what the town standard is?
I would tend to do that because it's part of the public right of way in a lot of respects, and it's what people are going to be seeing driving through there. And these folks are going to be making an impression in the environment of the town, and that's my opinion.
And Charlie, we can't have design regulations on structures on single family homes, but can we have regulations on fence types?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I think to Commissioner Urban's point, maybe you limit it to a couple options, but not allow anything goes might be a good idea. On the 15-foot setback, I'm still in Commissioner Miller's camp, because I mean, if you look at 40 feet, I mean, you're going to be building the fence up against the front door of some of these houses. I mean, they don't have not that much space. So,
well, that's their call because they want the fence for some particular reason. So,
yeah. Commissioner Miller.
You're mute.
You're muted. You're on mute, Jeff. Jeff, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Can we bring that photo back? It's 15 feet off of curb in Cary. And we already have fought years and years because our 51 Parkway is 25 feet right away. We add 15 feet to that, you're losing a lot, and a Leland cypress doesn't need 15 feet more further back. I just don't feel that that's fair.
If you build a multi-use path and it's 10, 12 feet wide, then what do you do? If a future road plans to have that widened streetscape, what happens then?
Mr. Miller, are you referencing the highway overlay buffer that has the vegetative setback requirement?
Yeah, we set back a landscaper where their cooks is because they were using it and all sorts of things.
If this is, so the intended purpose here would be for residential property, and we have very few residential properties that would be impacted by, that are in the highway overlay district. We'll go back and pull the map and see where that would even be applicable. Because that
isn't the one being discussed in that overlay at Sardis Road.
It's very close. I'd have to pull the map up. It's very close to it.
Well, it's relevant.
Commissioner McCool.
This may be a big ask, but based on the roads you've chosen for what would apply for here, how many homes does that affect? You know, does that affect 200 homes, 2,000? You know, I think that's kind of a question too, you know, because I think the mayor and some other folks were concerned that maybe that footprint was too big. Well, what does that actually look like by how many homes it would affect?
That's a good question, Commissioner McCool. We have not done a lot count as to how many residentially zoned properties this would impact. Additionally, you need to remember this is for the front yard, not side or rear. So a lot of parcels that are along these drives, maybe they're not fronting these major thoroughfares. So we can come up with, I think we can come up with a map that shows residentially zoned properties that are along these proposed the existing major thoroughfares. That would give you a better idea of how the volume that we're talking about.
I'd be kind of curious about that. You know, looking at the roads is one thing, but knowing an actual number would help me for sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yeah, I think starting with the roads or determining which major thoroughfares would be affected is a good starting point before getting into the materials. But, you know, I would want to know the speed limit and the number of lanes, the traffic count, sort of just to get, in my mind, I can picture it. But, you know, again, I think when we first talked about this, I said, well, the house on 51 is one thing, but if everybody on John Street starts putting up fences all along John Street, that completely affects the corner. So seeing that, but also I worry if we're saying that, you know, if you put a fence in and you must have like 2 foot mature or 24-inch mature, you know, maturing evergreens, then we start talking about equity factors, and I'm not sure, you know, that's if only people who can afford to do the landscaping can have a fence. Is that really the tone we want to set?
That's a good question.
Mr. Bland.
Yes. I'm like looking at the maps on here. There's a lot of other roads that would seem to be like Weddington Road, for example, going out, you know, when you're heading out towards, you know, 45 on Weddington Road, all along that thing. There's already some fences and stuff there, but, you know, how are these few roads were decided? It seems like a lot of them, there's a lot of places in town where this could be a, I mean, we got, and the thing that jumps out of my mind is, what if your neighbor decides he's going to put a fence up there? doesn't that have a pretty big impact on maybe adjoining property owners as to what their property is going to look like? I would feel, I don't live on a road like that, but I'm just thinking, what would I think of if my neighbor put a big fence like that out in his front yard? Okay, what's it going to do? Is that going to force me where I've got to put a fence up in my front yard? Or is that something, an eyesore that I'm going to have to live with? It's sort of, maybe it's just my way, a weird way of looking at it, but I'm sitting here thinking about what's it going to look like going down Weddington Road? What's it going to going out Pleasant Plains Road? Some of these houses maybe aren't real close, but some of them are. And so it just seems like we're opening a big can of worms here, but maybe not.
So I can address the first part of your question. That was how we chose these particular roads. And again, this was a starting point. I felt as though it was important to anchor which thoroughfares we chose to something that is adopted by the town, and that these are indicated on our zoning map. And so which is adopted by the town. And we did look at a number of other types of plans, comprehensive transportation plans, thoroughfare plans, and then also functional classifications of roads. And none of them really captured the main thoroughfares or that we were looking for when we were trying to define what roads to choose. Again, it is definitely up to this board to limit the number of major thoroughfares. We can just have them listed in the zoning document. I don't see that as a problem going down the road.
Maybe Charlie Buckley may think, I'd sort of like to get his thoughts on it as well. It seems like it's almost, I hate these words, but arbitrary and capricious. People could make that argument. You've harmed my property by allowing these people, you've just regulated and say he can put this fence up in front of his house, which impacts and takes away the value of my property. Okay. Or maybe they'd view it the other way. I don't know. It just seems like we need to have a pretty specific, set of how we're going to say and have a good reason for why we're going to put this kind of regulation in place. I would think maybe, I don't know, is Charlie on? I'd like to hear what he thinks about that.
Well, hadn't thought about it before, but I'll tell you, it seems to me that the use of private property by a private property owner still has some validity here.
Yeah. But the town is intervening here and saying that
the town is allowing something. It's up to each individual property owner to do or not to do as he pleases.
Okay. Well, that's just
these are not requirements that they do it. It's just these are authorities if they want to do it.
They can do it, okay, as opposed to not being able to do it, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I see that, but I'm just looking at from the other property owners, surrounding property owners, how they may view it. But
well, I understand if this was an HOA, you would be exactly right. But we're not an HOA.
Okay.
Commissioner McCool.
I kind of have a question, kind of questioning everything to do with this. Is there a significant need that's come toward the town multiple times where people are wanting to put fences in their yard, or is this simply a knee-jerk reaction based on one property owner and one specific circumstance? My concern is that we're kind of, changing everything for one specific circumstance when maybe it's not what's best for everything. I don't know who's best to answer that, but that's my concern.
Well, Commissioner McCool, for me, I think it comes down to a quality of life issue. Of course, you have you have the option to buy whatever house you want, but I certainly wouldn't want to live on Highway 51 with a small child with no fence in my front yard.
I guess maybe I have a different perspective. Are we kind of encroaching on the free market in a way too? Or if I have a small child, I'm not going to go out and buy a house on Pineville Matthews Road. I'm going to try and go into a neighborhood. I don't know, maybe maybe I'm off base and the board doesn't agree with me, but I guess I have some concerns that this is just a knee-jerk reaction to one specific.
Can I ask another question about, isn't this something that can be addressed by the Board of Adjustments? Is this not a kind of thing?
No, they voted no.
But so this is basically a reaction to them saying no to someone. Is that what it is? I'm just.
Well, the reason they said no is they have no authority to amend these, the UDO.
Okay.
They can't allow something that the ordinance itself won't allow. What they do is allow a variance so that they bend the rule a little bit, such as a setback area or something, but they cannot allow a height that the ordinance itself won't allow.
The Board of Adjustment could not find the required hardships dictated by state statute to grant the variance, so it was denied.
I don't even think it gets into hardships. A variance just relaxes a regulation. It doesn't allow the Board of Adjustment to amend the regulations to the extent that, well, okay, we're going to allow a 6-foot fence, even though across the board there is a limit of 4 feet. That would be an outright amendment to the zoning ordinance, which they don't have the authority to do.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Rob, maybe you answered this, but which ones of these are determined thoroughfares through NCDOT?
Oh, that I did not answer that question. The NCDOT has a little bit of a different naming convention. So if we went with at the statewide functional classifications, which I believe, if I remember correctly, the naming convention is other principal arterial, not thoroughfare, but has the same effect. It was Pineville, it was Highway 51 and Independence were the only two that were sort of qualified under the state definitions for that was close to what was major thoroughfare. It wasn't exactly there, but it was close.
Well, at some point they determined John Street was either a future thoroughfare or a major thoroughfare. I remember that coming up in the John Street discussion. That's, but I'm not sure. And to Ken's point, I guess we started talking about this because of one property owner, but I know homeowners who have wanted this in the past. So it's not necessarily just because of one, but because of quality of life. There are other people who this would serve. I think when people are buying homes, we're naturally sort of steeped in trying to understand local government, but most people don't know ins and outs of what you can do with a fence and what you can't. You just think you're buying a home and you can and put up a fence. So this in part would sort of ease the heartache of some of our community members, which goes back to Mayor Higdon's quality of life point.
Just to go off that point, that's what I was asking. Has this been a community need? I never want us to make a knee-jerk reaction on one thing, but if there's a significant community need, then obviously, you make a decision based on that. So that's what I was curious about. It's good insight.
And to be clear, the quality of life goes beyond just having children as well. I mean, if I lived in a house on a major thoroughfare, I would want to have some sort of privacy afforded to me. I don't know how many tens of thousands of cars go down, that road every day, one in particular. Are there any other questions from the board or the planning board? And most of the planning board have your cameras off, so you just have to shout if you turn your camera on and ask the question if you've got a question or comment. Or anybody else on the Board of Commissioners? Natasha, you got a question?
Nope, just showing that I'm here. I have crazy kids in the background, so no one wants to see that. No. No, I think everyone's making some really great points. And I think there's a lot to consider about, quality of life and those things. So I think that makes a lot of sense to have this discussion around all of that.
Mr. Foster, you got a comment or question?
Yeah, when I first heard about this, and I remember when we had an applicant a few months ago there at the corner of Sardis, I thought, well, I think that was mainly related to the gentleman's backyard. Now, question for Rob, this doesn't specify backyard or front yard or side yard, does it?
No, it does. This specifies front yard setback. So already in the side yard and the rear yard, we permit a 6-foot fence.
Okay,
So this is specifically for front yards, which right now we only allow a 4-foot fence across the board.
Okay, so the applicant there at the corner of Sardis and 51, that was a front yard request?
Yes, sir, it was. Their yard is sort of an odd shape. They have a rear alleyway driveway, but the front of their front yard is along 51.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Any further questions or comments? Jim.
Okay. I want to just throw my 2 cents in. Normally I wait for the planning board, but I'm a little concerned. I know we could put a 4-foot fence up. So from a, protection of the pet and the children, I think you can already sort of prevent them from running out in the road. So a 6-foot fence really just adds 2 feet so you get privacy. And honestly, I don't think the quality of life issues is important to me as trying to envision a town where I have a series of random 6-foot fences along all these roads that I'm driving through. It just seems like it would be kind of a travesty to do the town. I'd hate to be on a board that allowed that to happen on these major roads. I mean, imagine John Street, they're going to try to widen John Street at some point. And you got, that whole corridor could end up with the 6-foot fence down there. And that's the entrance to town. So I've got a problem with just adding 2 feet so we can get one homeowner out of non-compliance when it really affects the future of the town for me.
Thank you, Jim. Good points. Commissioner McCool.
He did bring up a really good point that I guess I had not thought of is we already do allow a 4-foot fence. So doesn't that mitigate your quality of life argument? I mean, what does that two feet really accomplish then to where, okay, your 4-foot fence isn't going to be quality of life, but 2 more feet is? I mean, I guess I don't see the logic there.
It's privacy. I can assure you that someone at my height would appreciate the other 2 feet.
Are you trying to tell me I'm short, John?
No, not at all. I'm just saying I'm very tall. So I think these are good points. They're all very good points. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I'm familiar with where Commissioner Bland lives. And the anomaly of his street is, to the best of my knowledge, everyone down the street, their backyard faces 51 and they have a 6-foot fence or brick wall. And it's the corner property and the new property that are facing a different direction. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, you're wrong. Sardis Grove Lane is not the same road that this gentleman lives off on, that lives on the corner. That road, there's they call it a back drive, but it's really the guy's the front drive of his house. And his back of his house faces on 51 until they had the tornado come along and blast down all those trees. I'm sympathetic to what the guy is, and I would like to see us try to do something to help the guy out if we can. But I don't want to kill a fly with a sledgehammer. You know what I'm saying? If we can do something that makes more sense, help the guy out, plant big trees back like what there were there. I think the trees are what he needs to provide privacy. I just don't see let's allowing 6-foot fences like they have. Every time I drive up and down Sardis Road North, I sit there and look over at there. And that's the problem that those people have there. there's just a whole long row of big, huge 6 foot, 8 foot tall fences go all the way down Sardis Road North on that one side. I think it's very unattractive, but other people may disagree. It's a matter of personal taste, I guess, but I would like to see us help the guy out, see if we can't do something to make it so that he can grow big trees there, a 4 foot fence, if that's what they are supposed to have there. You know, it's unfortunate that we can't do something like have a variance or something there. I don't know, but that seems to me a more logical, sensible way of approaching the problem than making it so that anybody can put up 6 foot tall fences, you know, along major thoroughfares. That to me seems very unattractive, and it's going to have unintended consequences that I don't think anyone would like, but that's just me.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Jim Johnson, how tall was your brick wall along Trade Street? 4 feet, 5 feet? What was it?
Well, let's see. I would bet that it was about 6 feet, honestly.
I'm just trying to be fair and honest because it was a gorgeous wall. And I wish I could have bought a portion of it to put on my property before they tore it down, but I just want to be equitable to everybody.
I agree. I would think
In the
that
county.
what you're saying is that was a beautiful brick wall. I mean, are we going to require people to build beautiful brick walls? Like I said, that was a very expensive, very, very expensive wall. Whereas I suspect that the wood wall that runs along Sardis Road North all the way up and down Sardis Wood North is relatively inexpensive, and it's sort of gotten run down and fallen down a couple different times. It's a pretty rough looking wall, you know.
It didn't look like the one in Cary. I didn't really find that one too appealing.
Yeah, true.
Having just put up some fence in my backyard, I can vouch that even the wood ones are relatively expensive, and for that reason, I don't think every Tom, Dick, and Harry in town is going to go put a fence up because they're very expensive. It's it's thousands and thousands of dollars for even a simple wood fence. So we might be overestimating how many people are going to rush to put fences up if we.
Yeah, but the only comparison I was making now is the one that I think Miss Johnson's fence along there, the big brick fence it was there for many years. It was a very expensive fence, much more than the wooden fences that we would see. Each one, it was probably $1,000 every few feet. But anyway, that's just
I have a few of those bricks. Jim, I asked your mother if I could have them when they were tearing it down, and she said yes. And I only got one small load, and the next day they were all gone, so I couldn't get any more. But yeah, they're beautiful bricks.
They were beautiful.
Well, the original fence was just a little 4-board wooden fence, and it was there for years. And then I don't know why he did that. He just put that giant brick wall up the whole side of the property. But like I said, we were in the county at the time.
Yeah, looked nice. Well, I think we've kind of beat this to death. So Rob, you've got great information now to go forward and solve this problem, right?
I do have a lot of good feedback. I really appreciate it from both boards. And this will be going, I will be able to refine based on comments that I've heard tonight, and we'll go to planning board for some more discussion.
Okay, Lori, I understand we have Salim Barakzai on to give public comment.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Barakzai, you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on, and then you may give your public comment. This gentleman is the only one who registered for public comment for this item.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. And I had a lot of comments, very useful, and some of them are something that I didn't even thought about. I would just wanted to clarify that whether the fence is 4 foot or 6 foot, if it is hidden by shrubs, does it make a difference? And that's what I really like. So from the proposed amendment, I like the idea that the fence should be obscured with the vegetation, evergreen shrubs. So it's not causing visual intrusion to the passerbys, and it's looking nice and green. So that part is good. I really like it. And really, at the moment, as the ordinance allows us, everyone can have a 4-foot fence. But what the rule is saying, that if you want to increase that 4 foot by 2 feet, make it 6 feet, then you can only do it provided you hide it with evergreen shrubs. And to me, that's a good thought, good idea. Only thing that I'm really concerned about, that I went on Arbor Day website and looked at different kinds of shrubs, evergreen shrubs, and there are different types with different spread, different heights, and there are a couple which have a spread of 3 to 4 feet, and they go like 10 to 15 feet. One of them is American pillar, other is emerald arbor vitae. So I was just thinking that maybe if there is an amendment, it should be more like, okay, if a property owner wants to increase the height from 4 to 6 feet, it should be obscured by evergreen shrubs. And both of these things should be outside the right of way. But the setback should be, the property owner can decide what kind of shrubs he's going to put in, and according to their requirement, he can decide the setback of the fence. That's my point, ladies and gentlemen. That 15 feet just seems too much. If I have to give up 15 feet in the front and 15 feet on the side, my yard is gone, really. It's gone. So maybe a homeowner, depending upon what kind of shrubs they are, maybe they can adjust. And from the town of Matthews point of view, none of that, neither the fence nor the shrub, should encroach on the right of way. That's my point. And I believe me, 4 feet to 6 feet makes a big difference. After this thing is started, I've already planted evergreen trees before this legislation came in on my own will, that if I ever have to reduce the fence height to 4 feet, at least I will have some security. But 2 feet to me make a big difference. And if it is hidden by evergreen shrubs, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to see that fence. And that should be a condition to my mind. So the town, it does not give a bad appearance or anything. It's covered with greenery. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you guys. I thank you to the planning department for keeping up with it and staying on the schedule. Thank you to Mr. Camp and Mr. Well, and all of you ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barakzai. I'll remind the public has 24 hours to submit comments by email at matthews@matthewsnc.gov. Again, that's matthews@matthewsnc.gov, or by phone at 704-708-1222. All right, this application will be heard by the planning board on May 25th and come back to this board on June 14th for decision. So good luck, planning board. This is a lot of good debate here, and I think there were excellent points made on all sides. So thank you. I'll now entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Bland. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. We're now back in regular meeting time. So we'll go to agenda item number 14, planning and development business. Receive a report from the planning board from the planning board chair, Mr. Foster.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and Planning Board. I have the Planning Board report from our meeting of April 27th, 2021. We have two items tonight for town board action. Item number one, the zoning application 2020-725, More Goodwin Custom Homes, change in zoning from R20 to RVS. Members of the planning board reviewed the updated site plan that moved the plan from 16 duet homes to 10 single-family homes. Members discussed the change and suggested to the applicant that he provide a letter from the adjacent property owner confirming their agreement to provide an easement and outlining details such as maintenance and use terms. The planning board unanimously recommended the approval pending that written communication confirming the allowance of an easement access to the north of the property. And I believe in tonight's package, a copy of that letter was provided to all the planning board members and the board of commissioners. The request was found to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan because it will provide a variety of housing styles, densities, and locations, and encourage design and construction of alternate style housing and infill development. The rezoning request was found to be reasonable as it provides a transitional land use between commercial and single family housing zoning. Item number two, text amendment application 2021-729, United Development Ordinance text amendment to the B3 zoning district to add indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed as a permitted use. Planning board members voted unanimously to recommend approval to the request to add indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed to the B3 zoning district. The zoning request was found to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan because it provides for another commercial use in the B3 zoning district. The request was found to be reasonable and that other types of indoor recreation are currently permitted in the B3 zoning district. And one other note, I would like to officially welcome Sarah Walker and Howie Lavender to the planning board team. They'll be joining us for their first meeting as alternate members of the planning board on our May 25th meeting. Any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions, so thank you. And Howie, you're certainly a familiar face with the various boards in Matthews, and welcome Sarah as well. I've often said that this is one of our most important advisory boards, and it takes a lot of work, so we really appreciate your willingness to step forward and jump into the skillet and help us give us some good advice on some of these zoning applications. We'll move on with our business tonight. The first is zoning application 2020-725 More to change the zoning classification from R20 to RVS on that certain property designated as 2132 Pleasant Plains Road and further being designated as tax parcel 227-17309. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Mr. Foster mentioned, this was to the planning board at their last meeting, and the applicant proposes to change the zoning from the property from R20 to RVS for the purpose of constructing 10 single-family homes. Some of the comments that were raised at the public hearings, was concern over the easement agreement for the entrance not being in place. Original density was a concern, and some mature trees were going to be removed, and there was a question over whether or not those could be saved. In response to these comments, the applicant has submitted a revised site plan showing a decrease in density from 16 to 10 units, revised elevations and floor plans with a new site layout that includes more tree save in the rear of the existing parcel. Planning board unanimously recommended approval to the Board of Commissioners pending written communication confirming that the allowance of an access easement to the north of the property. This communication has been received and is attached to your packet. Also, on Friday, I received a more formal draft easement between the two properties. So that is still moving forward. land use plan designation does not specifically make a recommendation for this site. However, it considers well-designed infill development such as RVS where appropriate and compatible with existing development. At this time, staff is recommending deferral of the zoning application because we just received conditional notes for the site plan. And at the time of this writing of this memo, they had not been submitted and reviewed in a timely manner. The revised site plan has not changed and the elevations have not changed. But, and I do have a copy of the updated conditional notes, but we felt those were important to review and before making a decision. But it is up to the board at this time if you want to move forward with this decision on this rezoning application.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. The agreement for the easement and shared access has been submitted and documented by the tennis, whatever their term is, by the tennis club, correct?
They have, yes, there is a draft easement it is not signed and executed, but it is a draft easement between the two parties.
But because this is still in the preliminary stages and elevations need to be approved and voted on and how many homes are going to be put in, that was a stickler before. It shouldn't be a stickler any longer, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So is a deferral still needed or should we consider a vote? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I have had a chance to review the conditional notes and they do seem to be in order. Again, as I mentioned before, the site plan and the elevations have not changed. My personal view is that I think it's appropriate to move forward with a vote. At the time I had to put together the memo for the board, we did not have appropriate information at the time.
I guess part of my point is the site plan, I think, has changed in that it used to be eight duets, give or take, and now it's 10 single family. They got through the hurdle of a shared entry with the tennis club, assuming that these homeowners become members of the tennis club, which would give them a good amenity benefit. I haven't seen new elevations. I just don't think that a deferral is needed at this stature, but I could be wrong on that.
Jay, would you like to comment on a proposed deferral or not?
Yeah, I think Rob summarized it fairly well. Both of us, well, individually at least, have reviewed the conditional notes. They've added the elevations to the site plan package. The notes they're very, very similar. I think Mr. Godwin probably pulled those from some recent rezoning approvals. They look very similar to some things the board's approved recently. So they seem appropriate to me. It gives us good guidance in the future. For instance, if elevations need to be modified, it sets out the process that the applicant can make minor modifications to the home elevations. So I'm sorry. So to answer your question, for us, they've satisfied what they need to do. If the board wants to take a vote on it this evening, I don't see any cause to wait, but it's the board's pleasure.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, or motions?
I have a question. At the last meeting when we discussed this, I asked the applicant to get further feedback from the neighbors since basically the layout was changed completely. Do we have new community input on this project or anything?
All right, so I have a couple different emails with the Nance. They are the properties. Jake, can you pull that site plan back up again? Anyways, they're the property directly to the south. That borders the entire southern border of the property, right there. They have, their only concern was just that we provide some sort of, green screenage with trees and such. And I assured them that their desire to have a screenage there basically would be shared by us as well, because obviously people who buy units 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10, just as much as they don't want to see the back of our houses, those people aren't going to want to see the back of their houses either. So yes, there is email communication, and we did get their blessing in an email saying, great to know that we're all on the same page and that you share the same concerns that we share. And the email just basically said, I think it said something about good luck on the project, looking forward to it, or something to that effect. I do have the email that I could send to the board if they'd like it to see it.
That's okay. I appreciate your update on that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I also heard directly from a couple of the adjacent property owners, and they seem satisfied with the current status. Just a couple of people I talked to, certainly not everybody, but the two that I talked to had issues initially, but feel like Mr. Goodwin addressed them. Again, are there any other, Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. I trust Mr. Godwin. He stated he lives across the street, I thought, in Brightmoor, but what I'm not used to voting on, since we're not in a public hearing, I'm not used to voting on a change of plans and a change of zoning without elevations. Isn't it appropriate to see the elevations of the homes they're doing and ask a couple questions about the footprint of the homes, that they're not snub nose and straight in a line, and what the price point is? Urban?
So,
We did see that. We've seen the new elevations.
What did I miss? Last I thought it was duets.
No, I submitted everything prior to the meeting 2 weeks ago, the zoning meeting, I believe.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
would you like us to share the information that we received today that has the conditional notes and the elevations? Because those do need to be part of the motion, should this be a motion to approve.
Sure.
All right.
The only thing I would add, this is the dilemma that staff gets put in when stuff comes in very late, right? They want to accommodate developers, and I saw Mr. Godwin's reaction, how kind of very frustrated reaction, but this kind of has this trickle effect of us staff not being able to provide the board good information, really to no fault of the staff.
What's the price point, please?
In the mid fives.
Okay.
You remember these, Jeff? They all had very patriotic names.
Like to change the Jefferson, Jeffrey Miller.
You can do it.
No.
For the mid fives, we can make that happen, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
So I would like to point out note 7C that does send this back to the Board of Commissioners if there are additional elevations proposed. Sorry, moving things around. Right. Let me zoom in a little bit. Yes, this language right here.
And Rob, how many houses are allowed on this by right? Just as a reminder.
Oh, goodness. Well, in R20, I think we calculated it out to be 6. Maybe less, because you'd have to put in because of the road infrastructure.
I saw Jay put up a 4. So is it 6 or 4? Are we averaging it? Okay.
Oh, did I? I didn't.
I
put
did.
my hand.
I put up.
Oh,
4.
okay. Mayor did.
I thought it was 4.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm certainly bow to the experts here. I don't know. I thought it was about 4.
Without someone doing a layout, it's really hard to say. Yeah, it could be
Say
4
it's
to
between
6.
4 and 6.
Mhm.
Between 4 and 6.
That's a healthy guess.
Does anybody need more time to read the notes, or?
I guess I'm still struggling with this number of, it could be 6 and
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Since the conditional notes have been satisfied and submitted, rather than defer, I'd like to make a motion to approve zoning application 2020-725, change in zoning from R20 to RVS, and that it's consistent because a rezoning with the land use plan will provide an infill residential development at a moderately higher density in the surrounding area, and that it's reasonable in that the rezoning will provide new housing opportunities within the town of Matthews.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. We have a motion. You have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second from Commissioner Whitley. Is there any further discussion before we call for the vote? Okay, we'll vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
No.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that passes 5-2 with Commissioners McCool and Urban in opposition.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We'll just to clarify, Commissioner Miller, you referenced those new notes that we shared with you as part of your motion, correct?
Correct.
Is that sufficient, Charlie?
Yes, but all the conditions through this evening's meeting. And that's basically.
That's what I second too.
Thank you.
Okay. Move on to the next item. 14B, zoning application 2021-729 to amend the UDO to add the permitted use indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed in the B3 zoning district. Mr. Will, you're up again, sir.
All right, thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. Again, a little brief background. Interpeaks is the applicant. They are a climbing gym located at 10715 Independence Point Parkway. And they fall under the category indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed in the table of permitted uses. Currently, they're zoned B1 SCD, but as a part of their future plans, they will request a rezoning to B3 in order to increase the height of a portion of their building for a taller climbing experience. The proposed text amendment would only impact the B3 zoning district. And at the planning board unanimously recommended approval of the zoning motion 2021-729 amendment to the B3 zoning district to add indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed as a permitted use to this board. Comments raised at the public hearing was a concern of a proposed height in the B3 without other proper controls. In response to these comments, the applicant is willing to adjust their request, if necessary, to add indoor commercial recreation not otherwise listed as permitted with conditions that the site plan be reviewed by the Board of Commissioners. At this time, staff recommends approval of the text amendment as submitted. We also have the applicant here for any questions, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Have any questions or motions? This is quite the pregnant pause. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the recommended zoning on approval on the grounds that it's consistent. The text amendment is consistent with the land use plan because it provides for another commercial use in the B3 zoning district, and it's reasonable because the text amendment is reasonable in that other types of indoor recreation are currently being permitted in the B3 zoning district.
Thank you, Commissioner Bland. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Urban. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go on to agenda item number 15, the consent agenda. I entertain a motion.
Motion that we approve consent agenda A through F5.
Motion by Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner McCool. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. We'll go on to new business. Consider revised leasing agreement with CSX for railroad parking lot. Mr. Blodgett.
Yes, sir, Mayor, members of the board. Waiting for the memo to come up. Got a little Jay's working on it. So the town of Matthews has had a lease agreement for the railroad parking lot with CSX since '89. The annual charge has been $100 since that time. The lease clearly grants CSX the authority to periodically adjust the rate. However, they've never done. However, they've got to give us a 60-day notice. They've never done it. The lease also includes a provision that says any improvements that the town makes to the property, and we've made some, by the way, including sidewalk paving or other improvements are subject to additional rent equivalent to 1/8 of the cost of the improvements. Neither of these provisions have ever been enforced or executed by CSX. Back in February, we got a letter saying they wanted to charge us $13,900 a year. I sent back a letter questioning that increase. What was the rationale? On the 28th of this month, or last month of April, they sent us a revised request proposing a $650 annual rent and including a 3% annual escalator. For background, I've included all three of those letters. I talked to the CSX representative. He said that recently CSX has been reviewing leases within their system. He said there's thousands of them. He said they've been particularly focusing on high value areas like Matthews. The size of the lot is about 1.2 acres. He acknowledged that they don't want to see the town just simply walk away. But he said that the 650 would basically cover in-house costs for invoicing and managing the lease agreement. Obviously, from a fiscal impact, it would go from $100 a year to $650 a year. I think the downtown parking lot is it's very pretty. I think we've done a great job improving it. And it contributes to a vibrant downtown. So we are recommending approval of this increase and then authorize the manager to negotiate with CSX to be $650 a year plus a 3% annual escalator.
Let me just say that I would love to get a part-time job with CSX if they require $650 to send a letter out once a year I'd like to have that job for $650, but I don't think this is a big profit center for CSX by charging rent to towns for places like this. But in all honesty, we've had it for a bargain for many, many years, and 650 is not totally unreasonable. So I would be in favor of this. If anybody would like to make a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mayor, if you'll let me.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to negotiate a contract with CSX that will increase the annual amount paid to $650 per year and include a 3% annual escalator.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner McCool. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I give a begrudgingly yes as well. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go on to the mayor's report. First of all, I would like to report that I'm not terribly sunburned and my skin really isn't pink. I have a new light on my laptop that makes me look bright red for some reason. I don't know why. See if we can get that adjusted by next week. I have a very short report. I want to remind everybody when Debbie Foster came on and was talking about milkweed plants. I spent a couple hours this past weekend working with Will and Martha Kraus at the pollinator garden at the entrance of Country Place. And if you haven't been over there, it's just really phenomenal. And my hat's off to Martha and Will because they're always volunteering and weeding it, etc. But it's full of all kind of native pollinator type plants. There's a lot of butterflies and honeybees and things like that there. It's a really beautiful garden. And I just wanted to publicly thank Will and Martha for kind of championing that effort. And it's, beautifully weed free. I think the Boy Scouts have also done a couple Eagle Scout projects up there, but you get a chance to get out of your car, you can park at Matthews United Methodist Church and walk over. So there's signs up for what the types of plants are. We planted a lot more this weekend, so it's a really nice experience. That's basically all I've got. We'll move on to the attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Manager, do you have a report?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bland, second by Commissioner Urban. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes, sir.
I vote yes as well. Let me go put some sunscreen on. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Good night.
Good
Safe,
night.
everybody.
Stay safe, everybody.
You too.